And we're live. What's up, everybody? Yeah, so this is my second live stream today. I don't think I've ever done that, but I've been gone for some time. So let's try to make up for lost time. We're going to try something new. Think of this as Israel-Palestine street epistemology. I'm not going to be sharing my thoughts. I'm not going to be debating. So for those who are tired of hearing what I think, you might like this more. For those who tune in because you like hearing what I think, maybe this won't be for you, but this is more interview style. Anybody can join, anybody. And I'm just going to ask them questions to get to the bottom of their beliefs, to understand where their beliefs come from, what drives them, what are their fears, concerns, and aspirations. It'll be an experiment. We'll see how this goes as a concept. So if anybody wants to join, raise your hand. Those on Discord, those viewing on the other platforms, if you want to join, I will send you the... Do we do this? Do I have you join the stream? Can you all not hear me? Oh, interesting. Hold on, I'm getting word that those in Discord can't hear me. Could those here on YouTube hear me? Please let me know on YouTube if you could hear me. Hold on, that's weird. Microphone. Should be working, yeah. Hold on one second. Okay, hold on one second. Can you hear me now? Okay, cool. So we're good. Okay, so I'm going to just repeat the concept for those on Discord. This is a new concept, Israel-Palestine epistemology. I'm not going to be sharing thoughts or debating. It'll simply be inviting people on, and I will be asking them questions about their beliefs to get to the bottom of their beliefs. What are their fears, concerns, aspirations? How strongly held are these beliefs? And what can they... what might change their mind? Like, if given certain circumstances, can their mind change? I think it'd be interesting exploration of ideas to see what drives people and their different views on the conflict. So whoever wants to join, raise your hand and we'll bring you on. If you're viewing this not on Discord, I will drop a link. I'll drop a link for you to join the stream. Hold on. Yeah, let's give this a shot. If people like it, then we'll keep doing it. Okay. Cool. We have a Trish here. We'll put a Trish on first. And I'm kind of just flowing with it, so I'll probably improve at asking questions as the time goes. Like, I don't even know what the first question should be. But you know, I guess we'll see. So Atreus, welcome as the first guest to this new show. Israel-Palestine, what do you believe? Or why, sorry, why do you believe that? So maybe, what's a good first question? Probably should have thought this through. So let's start general. Generally speaking, yeah. What are your views on Israel-Palestine, if you could explain it in 60 seconds?
My view, in 60 seconds. Wow, that's an ask.
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge, but well, you'll have a lot more time to talk after the first 60 seconds.
How can I sum this up the best? I think that Israel has the right to exist. Israel has the right to defend itself. I don't think that Israel is committing, any atrocity. I don't think willingly. I don't think it's with the intention of trying to hurt anybody or like really hurt people. But I do think that there's extraordinary circumstances that Israel's put in, and it's very difficult not to have casualties in those situations. They make mistakes, sure, yeah, plenty of mistakes, especially this current government who I'm not supportive of at all. That being said, I mean, I am supportive of the Bennett government who, I mean, there's going to be not a lot of difference in some of the way that they're doing things, but I mean, whether or not I disagree with how things are going and what they, I mean, the situation is they are what they are, right? It is what it is. And it's going to be very difficult. I mean, we can get into a discussion as to how we can change things. Honestly, I would rather get into that than get into the nitty gritty of the present day, because that's a discussion that not many people are having, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But did I explain?
Yeah, cool. This definitely gives me something to work with. Just real quick, I see we have a comment from James Delmore saying, hey, Adar, are you available for debate sometime on Israel-Palestine conflict? Yeah, always happy to discuss and debate. Just shoot me a DM and we'll find a time. Cool, Tresh, thanks for that intro. So I want to actually explore something you said. You said you believe Israel has a right to exist. So I want to dive deeper into this. Do you believe that states have rights? Like, what's your thought on that? What does it mean for a state to have a right? What rights do states actually have?
I mean, I could ask you that, I guess. I mean, what rights do states have? Every state, I guess, who exists has the right to exist because they exist, right? I mean, I think therefore I am, Descartes, and so forth, right?
Okay, so for you, it's more so. So you asked the question back to me, but this specific type of content is not about me sharing my opinion, or less so about me sharing my opinion, but because you asked me, I personally don't think that states have rights. I think that people have rights, and those people can collectivize and build systems and institutions to protect their rights, and that can look like a state, right? So the state exists because it's the will of the people. Living on like a certain geographic location. That's generally how I look at it. But
well, are there states that don't exist that should exist, or are there states that do exist that shouldn't exist? I think that's where what we should discuss if we're discussing this subject, right?
Well, so let's keep exploring. So for you, it's more so.
I mean, like for example, I'm supportive of a Kurdish state, possibly if that's what they want. I'm supportive of like a Druze state if that's what they want. Which I don't know. I don't think that is what they want in that regard. I mean, I am supportive of like a native state in America and or Canada. I mean, Canada has something like that in Nunavut, but
okay. So I think you actually are you're essentially saying it's not that the state has a right, it's that the people who live on a land can collectivize and build a state. That is a people's right. It's essentially you're saying Israel should continue to exist because it is the will of the people living on the land for that state to exist. Okay. Yeah.
And I mean, I'm supportive of a Palestinian state. I mean, that being said, I'm just questioning if, like, at least for sure the Palestinian government wants a state to exist, or if the majority of the people want a state to exist, or do they just want Israel gone? Because like there are many opportunities to have a state, and I mean, they could still go through the processes of creating a state. I mean, like Canada, England, Australia, so forth, have all like said that they want to recognize a Palestinian state, right? So like the mission should be trying to create a Palestinian state. I feel like the only way, I mean, I think it used to be the best way, but this is the only way right now because of how much power Israel has right now. Because Israel, I mean, throughout the past in history, Israel, Jews didn't have much power in the world. Even in their heydays, when they thought they had power, they were just, ultimately crushed oftentimes, right? Yeah, it's going to be hard to negotiate, definitely with this government, even the next government, because they do believe, a large portion of Israel does believe that there isn't a way. Every olive branch that was extended has been, destroyed, and the other side also feels like there is no olive branch. I don't know. I would love that. That's why I'm here, to have these kind of discussions and to see what it would be acceptable and not acceptable to both sides, right?
Right.
Because like if I just wanted to be in some like ultra Zionist bubble. I mean, I'm sure we have group chats, all of us, including you, probably some level,
Right.
or
So
just like family or whatever it is, right? I mean, we have our networks for that, right?
so you ultimately do support a Palestinian state as well.
For sure, yeah. I mean, anybody who wants to create a state, I have no problem. Israel doesn't need that land for the sake of the land. And for me, what my defense, I mean, any kind of defense I have of that, which is not much right now, because like I said, they don't need the land. It's just for security that I might accept it. But for me personally, what really is the thing that actually matters to me is, like I told you before, is the destruction of historical artifacts or historical sites, because to me that is like, that's almost like God, like blasphemy kind of thing for me. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Or not blasphemy, but like whatever, the destruction of like something holy, desecration, holy desecration or something. You know, like somebody like, you know, stepping on a kippah, or like what's it called, ripping up some holy book, the Quran, or you know, the Bible or something.
Wait,
I
so
see that
you
like,
what you're sorry, explain more the importance for you, the holy sites.
it's not about them being holy sites. It's about them being historical sites that we can gather so much information from. All the archaeological digs that we should be doing there, like that kind of stuff, is really what bothers me, that they're being destroyed.
Well, I'm not sure where
Because
you're
I mean, like
referring
we
to.
discussed before,
I'm wait, can you explain what you're referring to? The holy sites, you mean currently in the West Bank?
well, yeah, the holy sites, there's that too. But what I'm talking about, historical artifacts, like there's a lot of pottery that was that like, for example, there's a lot of like, you know, accounts of like the first settlers coming in saying that there were piles of pottery just destroyed around the area, that they've now been able to recover a lot of that stuff.
Oh, so one of your
from
concerns so if I'm understanding you
there's accounts from
correctly,
the police.
what one of your
There's accounts from the police in Israel of like artifacts being destroyed at the Temple Mount and stuff. So that's what worries me. You know?
yeah, so you're saying one of your concerns with Palestinian sovereignty is the destruction of historical artifacts?
Well, I'm saying any kind of credence that I give to the settler situation is that some of that stuff will be protected. And I don't know. I want a future in which that stuff will be protected. You know, like I would love for a Palestinian government that accepts history how it is. You know, and you and I know that it's not like, I'm not talking about like religious history. Like there's no Moses. Maybe there's, you know, even less likely the further back you go. Whether it's Abraham or definitely Noah or whatever it is, you know, Adam and Eve and stuff like that, right? But I'm talking about actual history, stuff that we can actually know. And, you know, some of it might align with religious aspects, but like I'm talking about like, you know, kings and stuff like that, right? And this is interesting stuff that I think we should know. And some of it might not, like a lot of it doesn't, right?
Right. So, but as long as you can get a guarantee that there would be a respect for historical archaeology, that's a concern of yours that can be very.
That's the primary concern for me. Yeah, for sure.
So how do you think? So right now you support two states, but currently we have a situation where you have nearly 1 million settlers living in the West Bank. They're heavily armed, and very many of them are very ideologically driven. How do you think we can create a state with their presence in the West Bank?
Well, I mean, first of all, I do feel like Jews have the right to live in that region, whether they call it Judea and Samaria or whether they call it, you know, the West Bank. It's like West Bank of what, right? There needs to be an actual name for that. So if Jews want to live in Palestine or whatever it is, they're allowed to live. I think that they should be allowed to live there, right?
So you would say
under the Palestinian government.
Yeah, you don't support uprooting them. You say let them live in Palestine. They would just need to respect the laws of the Palestinian state, and then the Palestinian state would need to provide them protection.
Yeah.
And then whoever's not happy with that situation can move into Israel proper.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Israel will have programs to try to incentivize people to leave.
But, yeah, and I imagine most wouldn't want to live in a Palestinian state. That's my impression.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think most would want.
And realistically, like we know that 90% of the people are on the border, so it's like, you know, who cares? It's like a small, tiny settlements in between here and there. But I mean, they're a big thing for me. like I said, it's not the primary thing, but it is the primary thing for all of Israel, probably. Maybe even including you. That I'm maybe not. I don't know. But even like a lot of like liberal people are still like, okay, this is a hard line, a red line for us, or whatever it is. And that places like the Shiloh hilltops in the Benjamin region, like that should be. That should those like the settlers should be vacated from those, given something else anywhere. else, and have that as a military checkpoint. Not a checkpoint. Nobody should be there. It should be like a no man's land. Because it's too much of a risk for anyone to have. Settlers shouldn't be living up there because let's say a terrorist comes up there, they have access to all of Israel. It would take 30 seconds to hit Tel Aviv from up there. With a rocket or something like that. I don't think anybody should have access to that area like that. Those are the settlers that I feel like should be uprooted. And there should be like I said, some kind of outpost there.
Okay, so, and you say you support Bennett, but so why, Bennett doesn't support two states, right? He's a pretty staunch one-stater. So given the fact that...
it's not that I really like Bennett. But no, he's not a one-stater.
He is. He just wouldn't be. It's a one state where Palestinians wouldn't have equal rights. Bennett's pretty. Bennett is pretty explicit on the land remaining under Israel's sovereignty from the river and the sea. Like that's very clearly his position on.
I haven't really seen that. Like I said, I think that he will still go through with the same things that at least right now Netanyahu's. I don't know if he'll go farther than that as to because he's not trying to cater to what's it called who are these fundamentalists?
Like Ben Gvir and Smotrich.
Yeah, Ben Gvir and Smotrich. So he's not trying to cater to them. They're not part of his government. They're going to be gone after this government falls apart. So I don't think he's trying to do anything. But I do think that he's going to probably annex Area C. I don't know who isn't really, even liberal government. I don't know if they would not want to annex Area C at this point, right? But I'm not for that myself, but I have the luxury of not being there and not.
So why not? So can I ask you why you support someone like Bennett and not somebody like let's say Yair Golan, who is very explicitly a two-stater?
Because Bennett is the option right now. It's like it's either Bennett or.
Okay, I get what you're saying. You're saying it's a strategic vote, and you consider it to be the better of two options. But what about what about Eisenkot?
Who else is in there?
There's Eisenkot, who seems to be leading now, or the favorite to win. Actually, hold on. What is?
You have the center.
The favorite to win right, based on prediction market.
In the middle, it's like I don't see a problem with that government right now. There's no way Israel's going to choose an extremely left government right now. Let's be real here, right?
Yeah. So
security is a huge risk. It's a risk for everybody.
So, just so you know, based on prediction markets, which are generally pretty indicative of truth, Gadi Eisenkot is 41% chance to win the next election. Netanyahu is 34%, and then Bennett is 13%. So it seems like. Based on if you want the strategic vote for somebody other than Netanyahu, it seems like currently Gadi Eisenkot would be the one. So I would just recommend looking into him and seeing if his ideology is relevant.
Fair. I'm not a voter in Israel.
Okay, so it's support from afar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're asking me my opinion on it, right? I lived in Israel. I could vote if I wanted to, but I don't want to. So.
Fair. Okay, cool. And anything else you want to share before we move on to the next person?
No, if you feel like we touched on all the bases that you want to touch on, like I said, for me, what I want to talk about is the future of things. What do you think would be a good agreement? what do you think that they would accept? What do you think some kind of Palestinian leader could bring back to the people and say, wow, this is a victory? When even in 67, like even if they got 67, could that be a victory when every other leader has said that that's a joke? Do you have an answer to that question?
No, yeah, I do, but I really want to stick to the theme of this where I'm not the one answering the questions. I'll give you a very short response that we have seen Palestinians over the years warm up to two states. I mentioned this to you earlier today that today a higher percentage of Palestinians support two states than Israelis supporting two states. And
yeah, but does that mean that does that mean that they accept that right now Jews have Israel, but one day they will take it over again? Because that's what
I think. Look, this is a fear many Israelis have, but when people are living generally good lives and they're not humiliated every day by needing to wait at checkpoints, and they're not seeing Jews daily as their enemies, and they see that they can travel into Israel proper, and we have economic cooperation, and we start to build real ties. I really don't believe that they're going to ruin that and then wage war. I think Palestinians, their violence come from being in a very shitty situation, being desperate, not seeing other means to achieve their political goals. But if they are fully sovereign in a state, I don't think that state would wage war against Israel, especially not if we have strong economic cooperation with them. So no, I don't think that's what's going to happen. And if they do wage war, then we'll need to fight a war, which we've done in the past. But I just don't think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, but if they get loaded up by, like, let's say Iran, and Iran was never a check. Let's say October 7th, Israel's like, okay, I'm going to, turn a blind eye.
Wait, hold on. Hold on. But I don't think you say loaded up with Iran. The Palestinian Authority and Iran have zero cooperation whatsoever. The Palestinian Authority has significant cooperation with Israel. They have cooperation with the United States. We just need to keep that cooperation going. The idea that Iran can just step in there when there's currently zero ties between the two, I just don't think that's a legitimate concern.
Well, that's because Israel has them completely cornered off with Jordan or whatever it is, and Jordan doesn't allow that either. So it's like they don't have that kind of thing. Gaza has, the ocean there at least.
Yeah, well, so there's no reason to believe that in a future Palestinian state, Iran's just going to be able to take over. It's just, to me, it comes off. Some of it, I guess, could be legitimate fear, but I think there's this fear mongering from the pro-Israel side that they just want to believe that no matter what, we can never give them a state because it'll always end up violent. And then they make all these claims that, if you actually think about them, to me, they're just not at all compelling. And I don't think if they have sovereignty and they're not viewing Jews as their enemy every single day because of their daily experience, that they're not just going to wage war on their neighbor for no reason. Generally speaking, people don't wage war for no reason. We've given them a reason to fight us for the past 100 years. We need to create an environment that is hospitable towards peace, where they no longer have a reason to wage war against us. And I'm quite confident that that's how it would play out. And again, if they do wage war against us, then we know how to fight wars. But it's that's a bridge we'll need to cross when we get there.
Yeah, but you can't fault Israel from saying, no, we don't want to give them the chance where it's just going to kill even more people. I mean, right now, people are on their, like, I don't know, over 7th tour, 10th tour, whatever it is, it's like, it's a lot of...
But wait, so do you support two states or not?
I do support two states. It's like, you need to have a leadership that wants genuinely to have peace, not be like, okay, we're gonna take something, but then we're gonna take the rest of it after.
So based on what you've seen of the current Palestinian leadership, the PA, what makes you believe that that's what they're going to do?
I mean, that's what the rhetoric is. I mean, don't tell me you don't see still what the rhetoric is. Like,
no, wait, like, I'm not, but Atreus, is that
I asked you, I said, if you get 67, do you think they're going to be happy with that?
Yeah.
Do you think that they can come back as a win?
Yeah, for sure.
Every other leadership said it's a joke. Now it's not a joke?
No, so I don't think that's what every other leadership said. I think that's part of the Zionist narrative that's not grounded in reality.
Okay, then tell me what you think of the reality is, please.
I think that Palestinians have warmed up to two states, but every time we've offered them a state, it hasn't been a sovereign state. It's a state where we would control their borders. They couldn't have a military force. The land, in many of the proposals, their land wouldn't even be contiguous, so they couldn't even fully travel without going to Israeli checkpoints. Yeah, so they see that they see that as a joke. But an actual fully sovereign state on 67, a lot of Palestinians would say, yes, this is such an improvement of what we currently have. Let's take it. They would take it. They would build their institutions. They would restore
honestly,
they would restore their dignity. Yeah.
I do agree with some of those things. I think that who would accept a non-contiguous state? I mean, it's
no one. Anyways, but Trace, I do want to move on to more
are.
people. I want to stick to the theme. I want to stick to the theme. Okay.
For sure.
Cool. Thanks for hopping on.
Okay. Have a good one.
Cool. Who's next in line? We're gonna bring Evan J on, and then we'll bring Evman on. Evan J, you got to accept the request, and then you'll be on. If not in like 10 seconds, then we will move on to Evman. You don't see a join stage thing? Maybe raise your hand again. Maybe you accidentally clicked out of it. Okay, you should have gotten a notification now. Cool. Welcome, Evan.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yeah, how's it going?
It's going well. Really quick, you actually reacted to my debate with Rudy Rockman. I was the first debater, and you nailed it in that I follow and listen to your stuff, hence why I was able to deploy some of the arguments as it relates to the Gaza death toll.
Oh, okay, Evan, good. I'm glad we spoke. So you messaged me on Twitter, right? You just reminded me that I didn't get back to you. But yeah, so just to give some people context, so I don't know if anybody saw the Rudy Jubilee thing, Surrounded, and I did a quick review of it, and the first person on was Evan, who's here with us now. So welcome, Evan. And then Evan challenged Rudy on the death toll, and he made an argument that I said, he's been watching my content, and I had no idea that that was true. I just made that. I thought it was like a funny claim to make. And then you messaged me saying, yeah, I did get that from you. So I was very happy to hear that, because, when I do this content, the goal is to actually, spread ideas and present different arguments that can then be used by others. So I'm glad you used it. How was that experience for you?
It was good. I mean, it was interesting. I've done a few of those videos, and I don't know, Rudy strikes me as a very interesting person, because I don't doubt his sincerity in that he genuinely believes his advocacy is both in the interest of Israelis and Palestinians, but then he very much sticks to a one-sided view of history, or even today's current events. And then he has very interesting prescriptions about how to move forward. Like, he believes a quote unquote one civilization solution. I mean, I don't want to get too, bogged down into Rudy, but I think that whole experience was very interesting, just because of, who he is. So.
Right. Yeah. Hold on. I have a sneeze coming. Okay, it's gone. False lock. I noticed something interesting. Whenever I stream, I start getting itchy for my cat's fur, but it's only when I stream. So it's something about the electric frequency of the computer and fur. I don't know. Do we have a biologist in the? Somebody tell me why my nose gets itchy whenever I stream, and my cat comes near me. Anyways, so yeah, interestingly, after I did the review, I sent Rudy a message giving him feedback on the things he got factually incorrect, primarily about the death toll. And then we kind of had a little back and forth through WhatsApp voice message, where he also expressed his disappointment in me because of my commentary the past few years. And then we just agreed that next time he's back in Israel, we'll meet and talk about it. But okay. I don't want to make this session about the Jubilee session. I want to keep to the theme. So what are your views on Israel-Palestine, generally speaking?
Yeah, I think I do share a lot of, I guess you would say, common leftist positions on Israel, in that I do view it as ultimately a settler colonial state, motivated. And I think what worries me is it's has a lot of deep-seated, both religious and in some ways ethno-supremacist ideology. And then as far as like solutions go, I think that's where I'm a bit more open to varying perspectives. I don't necessarily take a hard stance one way or the other when it comes to one state versus two state. I think idealistically, I would like to see a secular binational solution. And I think also because of the way how deep seated many of the settlements are, it increasingly becomes impossible for me to envision a place where, you know, those settlers would be removed to make way for a Palestinian state, or a situation in which those settlers would live under a Palestinian state. So that's why I think the single state solution, at the very least, needs to be brought up further in discussions. But I'm also under no illusion that a single state solution is at all closer, or even closer than a two-state solution.
And do you have concerns that under a one-state solution, when you have two populations with so much animosity towards each other, that it would just lead to some kind of civil war?
Not necessarily. I think similar to what you hinted at earlier, I do view violence and the sort of motives for violence often rooted in people's material conditions. And so I think that as long as there is some sort of freedom of movement and safety for both populations, I have a hard time seeing, outside of maybe a few various instances or here and there, I have a hard time seeing people find good reason to take up any sort of like violent armed resistance. As well as I think that you can also have like local forms of governance that
So more like a federation
that would coordinate them. Yeah, exactly. Like it doesn't necessarily need to be all one state. Like I think that's one of the other things I think that can get, that's something that I think people may be confused about, is I often hear that, oh, well, if it's a single state solution and then it's a majority Arab Palestinian population, you know, they will then control the government and can enforce oppressive policies towards Israeli Jews. But it's like, you know, there's still going to be a ton of Israeli Jews either in the military or in police force, et cetera. It's not as though there's going to be a centralized executive authority. And, you know, I think that as long as you have institutions that are designed to mitigate against those sorts of occurrences, it can happen. But like I said, I'm also not averse to the idea of a two-state solution. I just worry that that prospect is becoming increasingly further away, especially now that, you know, I mean, this E1 settlement project that Smoltrich is praising is deliberately designed, and many of these new settlement projects are deliberately designed to permanently erase the ability for a Palestinian state to exist by separating Palestinian cities in Area A from one another. But yeah, a book I would recommend actually it's called Tomorrow is Yesterday. It's a pretty recent book by Hussein Agha and Robert Malley. They're both negotiators, one from the Palestinian side and one from the American side. And it talks a little bit about just how the two-state solution, in many ways, it's very unfulfilling for the narratives of both peoples. You know, obviously on the Israeli side, having this historical or religious longing to live within the land of Judea and Samaria, whereas, you know, for the Palestinians, having not viewing 67 as necessarily more important to their narrative as a people as 48. And so the longing to return and have a just return to the lands that is now, that is now called Israel, I think is in many ways just as historically important as a narrative as the expulsion and occupation post 67.
Okay, cool. So one of the main objections is that we even see a trace here saying there 100% will be a civil war. Would you guys like to have a short back and forth about this topic? Would you both be interested in that? A trace believes that.
I would like to preface that it feels very like just speculative, so I just don't know how far that conversation is going to go. One thing I will say is the one of the issues as to why I think Israelis have gotten comfortable with the status quo is anytime there's a period of violence, such as obviously what we witnessed after October 7th, the argument becomes, well, it's obvious we can't allow Palestinian, either a Palestinian state or for them to be citizens within our own country because of the risk of violence. But then when there are periods of very little violence, because the status quo favors Israelis so much, it becomes well, why would we lift the occupation? There's no really benefit. And I think that because there hasn't been a sufficient enough cost upon Israelis, or at least not the way that they view it, there hasn't been that incentive structure.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to bring Atreus on. We're going to just do 10 minutes because there are other people waiting. So those waiting, thank you for your patience. Atreus, I'm bringing you back on. The first topic, he said you described Zionism as settler colonialism, and then Atreus said that you don't know what colonialism is. So maybe let's start there. So Evan, you start. Evan, you start by explaining settler colonialism, and then Atreus can explain why he believes. Actually, I think it's actually probably easy to resolve.
I can do it in reverse if you want.
Okay, go. Yeah. Start.
Evan, what would you rather happen? Would you want to say your piece and then I'll do it, or should I say my piece and then you can say how you disagree with that?
Either or. If you have something you want to get off your chest before it.
Well, I want to say off my chest because I'm not Israeli. You were saying how Israelis talk about it. I'm not Israeli. I'm Canadian. I majored in classical history, minored in comparative religion, and an honors history program. I lived in Israel for 2 years doing archaeological digs. I went to yeshiva. I'm not a religious person at all. I mean, to me, this is all separate from things. But I just want to explain some of my background on things, right? So there's that. With colonialism, you need a mother country or a father country, however you want to put it. They need to be expanding and trying to bring that country into that other country. Jews trying to go back to their indigenous homeland is not. I mean, it's the opposite of colonialism. You have to understand. It's called decolonization, and it's pretty much the only example of people going back to their homeland. Unless you're trying to tell me that Jews aren't actually Jews, then.
Well, if you're calling it decolonization, then what you're insinuating is that the Palestinian Arabs living within the West Bank are colonizers. Do you take that to be the case?
I'm saying that those lands were colonized lands from the time that the Jews were kicked out of it.
If Israel is decolonizing the West Bank, who are they decolonizing it from? The Palestinian Arabs that live there?
Well, in 48, they were decolonizing it from the British, and before that was the Ottoman.
I'm asking you right now. Where when Israel builds settlements and controls and holds domination over the Palestinian people, and you call that I know, but you call it decolonization. Who are they decolonizing?
I'm not calling that. Well, I'm saying that Jews having the right to, live in there. I mean, even that area that's still ancestral Jewish homeland. I mean, I will accept that much. And so Jews wanting to live there, and the Jews will want to live there. let's be real here. I see no problem with that. Do I see a problem with like pushing people out of there? Yes, but I mean, like this is I'm not
hearing an answer to the question. If it's decolonization, who are they decolonizing it from?
They're decolonizing it from everybody who is living there.
So the Palestinian Arabs. You're calling the Palestinian Arabs who've lived there.
No, you're putting words in my mouth. I'm saying that there are people left over from the Ottomans that were colonizers who are living there. There were people left over from the British regime who moved people all around everywhere. Like the Hashemite kingdom, like it came into Jordan, that shouldn't be there at all. However, right now they're Israel's best friends, so I mean, it is what it is, right?
Yeah, this is the issue with calling Israel a decolonization movement. It entails calling the Palestinian Arabs who are indigenous to the Excuse me, hold on. I let you go on.
I didn't say that. So you want to just go off on a train that I'm not even on.
I'm saying that you.
No, I trust. Please let him finish. We're not going to do these interruptions.
Yeah,
okay.
but I'm not even on that train. He's on a train that I'm not even on.
It's not that you're saying it explicitly. It's that what you're arguing entails that. It's the conclusion that I can draw by the logic that you're inferring. If you're calling Israel,
what I'm saying that in 14 that was decolonization. That's what I said. You're pushing it. Oh, now they're still trying to decolonize. No, they're living in the land. That's their. I mean, yeah, it's state. Any other states you say shouldn't exist? No. So it's like, yeah, this is their state. They think. With regards to the West Bank, like I said, I'm not supportive of that. But
are Palestinian Arabs indigenous to the land?
I'm sure some of them are. Anybody who was born there for sure is indigenous to the land. Yeah, I mean,
some of them are.
Wait, Atreus, every Palestinian,
right?
almost every Palestinian living currently between the river and the sea was born there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. So anybody who is
like 99%,
like 99%, yeah.
The majority of them are.
Okay, I think it's a simple answer, but let me say,
Wait, guys, hold on. Real quick, we're just gonna do a much more clean back and forth. So Evan, take another 60 seconds and finish your point, and then we're gonna give it over to Trez.
Yeah, so why I would consider Israel settler colonialist is because the building of settlements on Palestinian land displaces the indigenous native population. Israel's history has often been one of Palestinian dispossession, and their current control of the land also involves dominion over the indigenous Palestinian population. So I don't understand how you can call it decolonial when the actions of what you see from Israel is textbook what you would see from a colonial power. Moreover, and the last thing I'll finish on is that the very fact that Americans who have no connection to the land aside from maybe religious or bloodline going back thousands of years can move into the West Bank and have more rights and dominion over the indigenous Palestinian population is exactly what you'd expect from a settler colonialist project.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so I don't even know where to start with this. I mean, none of these things are indicative of colonialism. They're indicative of what happens when you win a war. I mean, yeah, first of all. Second of all, what's it called? Yeah, it's a huge mess that I need to reassemble here. That, oh yeah, right, somebody can come in and have more rights. Everybody has equal rights. I mean, are there, restrictions? Yeah, there are some streets that say Jews aren't allowed here because they'll be killed. There are clear signs that say that.
Wait, Atreus.
Put by Israel.
Yeah, those signs are put up by Israel, not the PA. Just so you know, those are Israeli signs. But maybe I want to take a step back. I actually want to take a step back because I think
Israel has pulled people out of their homes and stuff. Yeah, I mean, those are Jews that they did that to.
Atreus, real quick, because when Evan initially described it, he used the term settler colonialism, and then you said you used the term colonialism, and these are two distinct.
Okay, you redefine your thing then, Evan, because yeah, I don't understand how this is colonialism.
So I think maybe this is maybe it's just a different understanding of terminology. So you then
No,
said,
there's no way that you can describe it as colonialism. He's like, oh, it feels like it to me. Well, it's like,
wait,
okay,
wait, Atres. When Evan was first spoke, he used the term settler colonialism, and then you said colonialism. But settler colonialism and colonialism are two distinct concepts. Okay.
So then explain yourself then.
No, no. Let me just read to you a quick. Let me read to you a quick difference between colonialism and settler colonialism. So colonialism is when a foreign power controls another territory, primarily to exploit its resources, labor, or strategic value, often without large-scale permanent settlement. Settler colonialism is when outsiders migrate to a territory intending to stay permanently and establish a new society, often displacing or replacing the indigenous population. So Israel, if Jews are indigenous to the land, it could still be settler colonialism. All it requires is a foreign population moving in mass and aiming to replace or displace the local population. The fact that we have historical connection to that land does not negate the fact that it's settler colonialism. So based on the definition of settler colonialism, do you deny that that's what Israel is engaging in?
Yeah, that's not, yeah, like I said, Jews going back to their indigenous homeland is decolonization, is the definition of decolonization. If you open the dictionary and decolonization, you see Jews there going back to their indigenous homeland.
Wait, no, hold on. I want to stay on topic. If settler colonialism means a group of people coming to a land, claiming it for their own.
Where are they coming from? Who are these people? Where are they coming from? They're coming from different lands.
Yeah, exactly.
Coming from one country.
No, that's fine. That's literally the definition of settler colonialism. They don't all need to come from one country. So settler colonialism, they can come from many different countries, but if it's a movement to establish a homeland on a land that's occupied by another people, then that's settler colonialism. We've had many examples of this throughout history. It's not just Israel. One other interesting example.
You can go to examples that aren't where they're coming from one country.
No, that's not true. You had like there was the colonization of the.
They were coming from America and Liberia.
There might have been others, but
No. So hold on. The colonization of Australia and America was actually a combination. It was a mix between traditional colonialism and settler colonialism. And the settler
They came from England.
No, that's not true. Not entirely. That's not true.
Is it clear and
hold on.
Why do we have to put it in
Hold on.
a box where it's not
Wait. Atres, real quick, because it's very hard for you to concede this point because you don't want. It's just anytime Israel's demonized, it's like you.
Properly, like, you know.
Okay, wait, hold on. Okay, so Zionism is settler colonialism of Jews coming from all different countries. Why the fact that they come from different countries would it mean it's not settler colonialism?
Because colonialism.
Settler
This
colonialism.
is the only example where it's like not coming from.
No, but hold on. That's.
It's a completely different situation. Just because it feels like it to you doesn't mean it is.
Every.
Same thing with the Irish. Let me just say one thing in 30 seconds. This is the same thing as like the Irish or the who are those other groups that are trying to conflate their struggles with the Palestinian struggle, or I guess black people in America or something.
Well, Liberia is a good example. Liberia is a good example of settler colonialism, of moving to the area of your indigenous homeland, and that's widely considered to be settler colonialism. But any form of settler colonialism, you could point to differences. So anytime you have an example of settler colonialism, each one is slightly different from the other. That doesn't negate it being settler colonialism. So we created this concept to describe a certain human dynamic of mass migration to a land with one population aiming to replace an existing population. That is an important human dynamic that has occurred throughout history that we create a term for because we recognize it to be bad. So we want to be able to describe it. The fact that they came from different countries doesn't change the essence of what's happening. So I still really want to know why it matters that they come from different countries.
Can I also just quickly add the experience of the indigenous population, being Palestinian Arabs in this case, is identical. Like their experience is one and the same as the experience of other indigenous populations that have experienced settler colonialism. Like what they're experiencing and what they're going through is identical to that of other indigenous populations that have experienced settler colonialism.
And that's really the important part.
Well, no, I think that the important thing is right now we're just having a discussion as to does Israel have the right to exist or not.
What do you mean? We were describing colonialism and settler colonialism.
Well, I mean, yeah, no. The discussion is if Israel took the land or if Israel had nowhere to go, and that was the only place that they were safe, and it was like an imperative to build a Jewish state there. And on top of that, Jews bought the land. I mean, Jews worked the land, and Jews have always been in the land. It's not like this is not something that's even comparable on any level.
So explain how that's different from Liberia.
Because they all came from America, and even if they were trying to stop the oppression there, they weren't indigenous. No, I mean, definitely not all of them were indigenous to Liberia. I mean, and so they didn't know anything about the culture.
Wait. Hold on. Wait.
We're not there. They didn't have that kind of connection with that land specifically. Because it's a big place, dude. There's a lot of countries, right?
Wait, hold on. We've already established that the fact that they all come from one country is just irrelevant. That's just like
a very small place that people want to go to that feel like they have that kind of connection. And I mean, some,
Okay, I think we're gonna move on. This isn't really a coherent conversation. But we gave it a shot. Okay, we're gonna continue. Evan, anything else you'd like to say before we move on to the next person?
No, I think I'm okay. Thanks for having me up, though.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad you joined, and definitely come back. Cool. Ev, man, you've been waiting.
Yeah, can you hear me all?
Yeah, what's up?
So it's just going when I started coming on the stream, you were talking about the reasons behind Palestinian violence and saying it would be lessened. In the eyes of, I just want to know, because you're in Israel, you talk to Israelis, in the eyes of Israelis, do they think, we don't like the violence, but we know it's because of their upset with the occupation or whatever, or they just think it's anti-Semitism from Palestinians, just sort of inherent hatred of Jews they have?
Well, this is this session is about me asking you guys questions, not vice versa. But I'll answer this quickly, but then we're going to move on to the next person, unless you want to be the one questioned.
Okay, I can be questioned. Yeah. I do.
Okay, so your question is how do Jews view Palestinian actions? Do they view them as through the lens of anti-Semitism, or do they understand where it comes from? Was that your question?
Yeah, Israeli Jews in specific.
I mean, I would say this is something that plagues the Jewish community as a whole, is that we have dealt with anti-Semitism for thousands of years, that anytime something bad happens to us, anytime somebody doesn't like us, we gravitate towards that being the explanation. That's our go-to explanation. So when you talk to Israelis about why Palestinians don't like them, why the international community is against them, it's just anti-Semitism. That's the default go-to reason. And you see this also with activists, pro-Israel activists, how they call everything blood libel or some other libel, and it's unfortunate because it makes otherwise intelligent people not have the ability to really think through an issue deeply. They're just like, no, anti-Semitism. So they don't go deeper than just that. And there's often much more complex explanations much more complex and more accurate explanations to the hate Israel gets than just anti-Semitism. But it also just dilutes the meaning of the term. People don't take accusations of anti-Semitism anymore. If everything's anti-Semitic, then nothing is. So that's kind of, we're seeing now. And we saw, it's interesting because we did see this with a lot of the, social justice movement, how they used to describe everything as racist, and people stopped taking accusations of racist anymore. Everyone's a transphobe, if you don't agree with a very specific ideology. So people don't take these terms seriously anymore. it's all a similar form of activism where they weaponize the terms in order to shut down conversation, and it's really harmful to the people doing it, and it's just bad for conversation. But with that, I'm gonna turn this around and ask you questions. What is your general views on Israel-Palestine?
I mean, I guess my view is that both sides are probably probably teeming with hatred and just would kill each other. It's just that Israel is so much more powerful, so they can get away with more. It's my view. So it's not like I think either side is more moral. It's just whoever's more powerful will have the greatest kill count.
Yeah.
That's Israel.
So how do you define how do you define morality, right? How do you make a moral assessment on each side?
Like what you would do to the innocence of the other side if you had the power to do so.
So wouldn't that create a situation where the oppressed side is inherently always less moral because the weaker side, given the power, if there's a reversal of power overnight, then the more powerful side or the weaker side granted instant power would be more aggressive in order to get back at the more powerful side. So, for example, given this, you can make a claim that Native Americans are less moral than European colonizers because had they had the opportunity, they just would have killed every white colonizer.
I mean, I don't know if that's the case with them, and I'm just saying that, I think there's enough evidence. Like, you look at the violence against civilians, with Palestinians compared to let's say South Africa, where there was violence, but it wasn't really towards civilians by the ANC though, or other groups.
Oh, there was it was less so than you had in Palestinian resistance, but ANC engaged in violence towards Palestinians, towards whites. But,
yeah, but I it's one example. It's much less so. Mm-hmm.
So you would say that you believe Palestinians are less moral because if the tables were turned, then they would kill more Jews than Jews are currently killing Palestinians?
I didn't say less moral. I just said I think if initially, yeah, but if the tables were turned over long term, I think we'd see a situation similar to how Israel acts, by Palestinians. I mean, I think if things had gone different in 1948, there could have been that situation,
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up a good point. It's if the power is reversed overnight, then it very well may be very bloody. But if it's a slow reversal of power, then it would kind of settle into a status quo. There actually is interesting data because we often hear that if the Arab armies won in 48, then the Jews would have been genocided, right? That's a common thing that we often hear. And I believed this most of my life until I recently learned that the Jordanian army actually overtook, I believe it was 12 Jewish villages in the 48 war. In one of them, there was a massacre of the men in the village. Unjustifiable to just massacre the men. In all other instances, they were just taken prisoner and then eventually released. So we actually did see a situation where the Jordanian military had full control over Jews, and they didn't just kill them all.
Okay, yeah, but I mean, that's Jordanians. They don't have a personal sort of beef with Israel the way Palestinians would, contesting over the same land,
So let's say there's somebody who, let's say there's, we could identify, it's a hypothetical, but there's somebody that had they been in Hitler's shoes, this is a person who just ended up sitting in jail because they did something bad as a kid. But their psychology is such that if they were in Hitler's shoes, they would have killed more Jews than Hitler did. Who's less moral? That person who was sent to jail at a young age and is just sitting in jail, or Hitler?
Well, I guess, like I said, like if this is totally like if they had power, then they'd be, I guess. I mean, this is like it's so apples to oranges. I'm talking about like two general like peoples like who have like various degrees of geopolitical strength over time, not like two individuals. I'm just
Well, I mean, the reason I ask it is because it sounds like your moral assessment is based on a hypothetical reality, right? So I'm just giving you a different hypothetical reality. But generally, the way we judge morality is not what somebody would do had they been in a situation. It's actually what are one's actions, right? Because there's only so much you could speculate on how one would act if the tables were turned or how one would act in a certain situation. That's all speculative. So generally, our moral calculations are based on what are one's actual actions.
Well, I guess you show on October 7th, like there's like a time window within like one day where they had like severe power over Israelis and they killed like 800 something civilians. I mean, so I guess that should show, because that was like one of the only chances, I mean, in recent Israel-Palestine history, if not all history of the conflict, that, Palestinians had, access to unarmed, vulnerable Israelis, for extended period of time, even if just one day,
Right. So do you think so? They have their one day, right? They have their one day to attack, so they make the most of it. So you'd say that would inherently make them less moral?
Well, you think I mean, Israel does killings in the West Bank. I don't know of a recent thing where they went into like a village and killed 800 Palestinians in the West Bank in one day. So, I mean, there's not like that like concentration of violence. It's
right, but we see that it's there's a different right. So as you said in your statement that Palestinians had one opportunity. This is their one opportunity, so they took it to an excess. Had they not had one opportunity, but had they been the ones oppressing Jews long term, and we actually have a lot of historical data, right? You have hundreds of years of Muslim rule of Ottoman Palestine, and it's not like we were seeing daily October 7th, right? In fact, and there was like an average of a pogrom once every 100 years, or once every 200 years on the land, so very infrequent. But when Muslims had power over Jews, Jews weren't equal, but they weren't acting like Hamas on October 7th. So how do you explain that difference?
I mean, Jews were such a small part of the land, so they didn't feel at all threatened by them. So I guess when Jews are like a much larger part, they would,
Wait, again, I missed that.
Jews were such a like small community, they didn't feel threatened at them by all. And I guess because you see like 1929, you have like massacres against Jews before Israel existed, and in Israel-Palestine though. So it's not like this only started when,
Well, I mean, 1929 was already like 4 decades after Zionism began. So it's not that the conflict started in 1948. It started with mass migration of Jews into Palestine.
Yeah, but I'm saying like once they became a larger community, they started feeling threatening, and then they started, attacks started more regularly. Yeah, I'm saying when there's such a small.
So we're essentially seeing that one's morality and the violence they use kind of has to do with their conditions and how desperate they are. So here's another question. Is there anything that Palestinians did to Jews on October 7th that Jews didn't do to Palestinians in 1948, only at a larger scale?
I don't know if they killed 800 people in the course of one day in the massacres in 1948. I don't know if that was ever done, but I know the totality over the course of the entire war was more civilians, but within the compressed time of one day, I don't know if there was that big of a massacre.
Let's think. You had anywhere from 12 to 30 something massacres. It's contested. Some of them had hundreds of people. Yeah, it might be there wasn't a single day. You ultimately had 12,000 Palestinians killed, primarily civilians, in 48. And the means of the killing, like massacres, a lot of the atrocities we hear Hamas doing, Israelis did the same. So doesn't that kind of show that human morality, like humans more or less are very similar when their environmental conditions are similar? So like when Jews are desperate and scared for their life, they act very brutally. And when Palestinians are in similar situations, they do so too.
I'm just saying, I don't know if there was a single day in 1948 where the Jewish forces collectively killed more than 800 civilians. I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't think, from what I've studied, I don't think there is.
No, I'm saying I'm saying you might be right, but it's a much more prolonged thing. There was a much more equal balance of power. It's not a 1-for-1 comparison, because October 7th was a surprise attack where this was their one opportunity to create maximum damage. That wasn't the exact dynamic in 1948, but we see the massacring and just killing innocent people. We saw that in mass in 1948. And so do you put that at a different moral level as Hamas on October 7th? Essentially what I'm trying to get at is, it seems more or less groups of people act similarly if they're in similar environments. And that's just humans responding to their environment more than it says much about the morality of the Jews compared to the morality of the Palestinians. It's our respective moralities, or our morality, our moral worldview is more than anything determined by our environmental conditions.
It's also like, I don't know if this is as relevant, but like on October 7th, they weren't even just killing Israelis. They were killing like foreign, Thai workers and other people, though, who obviously aren't, party to the conflict. So I don't know that can be justified from their perspective.
You want my thought on that? I don't think they differentiate. I think the way they saw it is like they finally have an opportunity. They're not like, wait a minute, is that person Thai? Is that person? No, they're like, anybody here. They're just living. They're living free lives on our land. We're just going for everybody. That's probably how they looked at it. But again,
do you think that? I heard you say before you don't think they intentionally killed children.
Oh no, on October 7th they were avoiding children. Yeah, I think we could say that with a high degree of confidence.
Do you think that's just because there weren't as many children in like the places where they were attacking, or?
Well, no. So I think there's a few reasons for why so few children were killed, and just so we could get into the numbers, you had 38 children killed. That comes out to 2% of all of those, everybody killed. Children make up 35% of the Israeli population, but only 2% of those killed. When you look at children under the age of 12 and under, it only makes up 1% of all those killed. Now, there's a few reasons why. One, if you're attacking a lot of those killed were soldiers. You go to a military base, there's not going to be children there. That's going to only kill adults. Nova Festival also, there were no children there. That's going to kill only adults. But if you look at a long history of Islamic terror, there's close to no instances of them intentionally going after young children, and they wouldn't view like 14, 15, 16-year-old as a children. So you are going to find many instances of Islamic attacks that will target teenagers. But when you look at children 12 and under, you're going to find close to none, because Muslims they view children as pure and holy. It's just in line with Islamic doctrine that they wouldn't go after children. So there's the doctrine they follow. There's the historical data, but then you also just have instances where you have, for example, there's a video where you see a father with his child. They drive by, they shoot the father, they keep the child alive. They intentionally avoided that child. So if you're killing 1,800 people in just this like rampage, and only 38 children are killed, and when you look at the children who were killed, right? If you take the names of the 12 children, 12 and under, who were killed, and you look at how they died, none of them were executed. They were all killed in the crossfire. So yeah, I think based on everything we know about October 7th, children were avoided, adults, women, children, and elderly were intentionally targeted.
Do you think Israel has intentionally targeted children in Gaza? Or you think it's like a similar situation? Like,
I think it's a similar situation. Certainly not a systematic targeting of children. I think there's been individual soldiers who did target children, whether they were teenagers, teenage males who are no-go zones, or just, we at this point have a fair bit of testimony from both doctors and Palestinians of children who were sniped. So I don't think this was a matter of policy. I think this is just individual soldiers going rogue. But generally speaking, I don't think they're intentionally targeting children in Gaza. Certainly not as a matter of policy. But the numbers are also way different, right? In Gaza, 30% of everyone killed were children. On October 7th, it was like 2-3%. So that's like 10 times higher in Gaza. Not even 10 times higher as a total number. As a total number, you're talking about 500 times higher. As a percentage, it's 10 times higher.
Sorry, we're saying like, don't you have like a situation in Gaza where it's like pretty much like half the population is under 18 though? So it's just because there's so many more children, you're going to kill them?
No, but so in Gaza you have 50%, or around 50% are under 18. In Israel, it's around 35%. So there's a difference, but that doesn't explain the 10x difference, right? Not even close.
Bombing populated areas.
Well, exactly. That's what it is. The means of warfare are very different. When you're using high-powered explosive in densely populated neighborhoods, you're much more indiscriminate than an actual massacre. So
people use that of Israel, like, oh, Israel is more detached, or Hamas is just this like point blank barbarism, grabbing people, shooting them point blank, like the people have used that basically as to say why.
Yeah. So what do you think? What do you think is more barbaric? Like raiding a family home and then killing all the adults and leaving the children alive, or dropping a bomb on a family home and killing everybody inside?
I'm not saying that's my view. I'm just saying
No. I'm wondering if how you look at those, like what you think the moral difference between those things are.
I guess there's not much of a moral difference, but I guess I could see how someone would find it easier to do the latter, since you're not even like looking in their eyes. It's kind of like it's easier to compartmentalize, I guess, the latter.
Right, because there's kind of like a separation between it's not a close range shooting. It's like a pilot, a highly educated pilot in a plane dropping a bomb. So there's a separation between the violence. Is that where you think it comes from?
I guess that's what I would say. Like, I'm just saying, like, it's easier to compartmentalize for the person doing the bombing, I guess.
Okay, cool. Anything else you'd like to share before we move on to the next person?
I was just saying, did you ever serve in combat in the IDF?
Like direct combat where I had to shoot somebody?
Or just like combat situations, not like whether you personally like shot someone.
I mean, I served in the West Bank. The most combat thing I ever had to do there was just checkpoints and guarding Palestinians who were arrested. And then as a reservist, I served on the Syrian border during the Syrian civil war, which I was almost shot by a sniper, but never. What's that?
Like how long ago did you start serving? Like,
well, I served in the IDF from 2008 to 2011, and then I was in the reserves until 2014, and then they released me on ideological grounds because I told them that I wouldn't. I went to reserves for training, but I told my commander, I said, just so you know, if you call me to go into the West Bank or Gaza, I'm going to refuse. And then they sent me home, and then I got a call that they're releasing me on ideological grounds.
I just like you think, I was just saying, do you think the IDF is more extreme now than it was then?
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%, especially after October 7th. Not only are the people more extreme, it's that the commanders are more extreme, it's that the government's more extreme. So yeah, it's much more extreme.
Yeah, that's what I was asking. So, because I thought that was just like a perception. I want to know if it's actually true.
Yeah, it's definitely true. Yeah. And maybe at another time I could tell you guys about the almost getting sniped on the Syrian border. I'm good though, but I did hear it. I was able to hear the bullet, which is pretty scary, but I'm good. But I'll share that at another time. Thank you, Evan. Cool. Who's next? Jorge, and then Kareem. Jorge, welcome, man. You're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a challenge because we've spoken a lot of times, and you could still make the same point, but I'm gonna make you a challenge. I'm gonna ask you your views on Israel-Palestine without using the term intellectual error or intellectual mistake.
Ooh. Can I use fallacies instead?
I was just kidding. I want you to take it from a different angle, but no, you give 60 seconds to explain your thing, and then I'll ask you some questions about it.
Right. Okay. So my 60 seconds. So I believe Zionism in general is just a flawed ideology, just like socialism. A flawed ideology that made sense to a lot of bright people. I believe that the state of Israel had as much a right to exist as the Soviet Union. And but it's very important to see anti-Semitism for what it is. It's a set of intellectual errors or fallacies that can be easily overcome through reason and logic, just like we overcame slavery, unequal treatment of women, and so on. And a couple of the very popular ones that everybody has heard of, for example, Jewish overrepresentation in finance and banking, because the Islamic world and the Christian Catholic Church back in the day, they made it a criminal act to charge interest on loans, inadvertently turning over the entire sector to the Jews, giving them immense influence. When the whole Western world is giving you their savings, you're going to have a little bit more influence. Also, Jewish overrepresentation in the Bolshevik Revolution, just because some people are overly represented in a flawed ideological movement, it doesn't mean that they purposely did it, right? So those are just two very popular fallacies that can be easily overcome. So now, how do we overcome fallacies? Through reason, logic, education, and sympathy for the misguided. Now, Zionism didn't do any of that. Zionism said, oh, anti-Semitism is some irrational hatred we're never going to overcome. And the best thing we can do is just have our own country in Palestine. And, and remember, Theodore Herzl even wanted to convert Jews to Christianity. So, and then what else is related to Zionism? Vilifications, moral pontifications, hate speech laws. And none of these things actually overcome the fallacies. They can only intensify the hatreds. And that is why very easily, when we look at the history of involvement in the First World War, the Second World War against the anti-Semitic Hitler, I get it, Hitler made anti-Jewish fallacies. But again, you can only overcome the fallacies through reason and logic, not just moral pontifications, violence, and so on. So that's it. I just see it as an error. And I believe that once we have enough people that say, wait a minute, yeah, we can get along. These are errors. There's no one to blame. The hard left and the whole nonsense about settler colonialism and how the Israelis are just a bunch of, racist, that's a mistake. The extreme right saying that the Jews are a bunch of, satanic conquerors, that too is a mistake. So I just think that once we see it as an error and we have sympathy for all sides, I do believe that we will be able to have one state and that we will be able to integrate. And now I share House's concern that if we just pull the plug and everybody lives in one state overnight, of course, there's going to be violence, retributions, all kinds of chaos. But with time, with enough beacons of intellectual leadership, we can, and with a slow transition towards one state, we can eventually make it happen. So that's it. That's the
Thank you.
2-minute version.
I appreciate that. And do you have other historical examples of ideological or intellectual errors that were corrected through reason and logic?
Yeah, the biggest one that we can learn the most from was socialism itself. How did the Soviet Union, we came very close to having nuclear wars and all kinds of disasters, but through reason and understanding and great education and decades of suffering. And I think in many ways, what we're seeing right now with Zionism is the same thing. We already had the new historians. We already had all these people showing the real history, that it's not so simple as just, there's evil anti-Semites everywhere. We get to do whatever we want. And we have, look at the suffering. It's never ending wars and chaos. So just like the Soviet Union, after much writing and reasoning, they themselves, we had enough people in the Soviet Union, like Gorbachev, that finally said, okay, this is a mistake. I'm not going to clamp down on the dissident groups. We're just going to let the whole thing collapse. And I think this is what we're doing right now, little by little. But we need the right idea. So I think, again, a perfect example is looking at the Soviet Union. The patterns are the same. You know, a lot of
Wait, but so what? But was the Soviet Union, did it collapse because they had debate around reason, or it collapsed because it was a system that didn't work, which created, which was essentially, if a system collapses, then people are then forced to then find and assess a new system. So they're almost forced to think of something new because the prior system didn't work. But how does that map onto Zionism, where they believe that Zionism is still the best of all other options, right? Like if Zionism fully collapses and Jews are kicked off the land and whatever, then they're like, okay, well, I guess that's how you would kill Zionism. It wouldn't be through an intellectual conversation. It would need to be through actual actions that change the dynamics.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. And I mean, we do not know how Zionism is going to end. I mean, I believe it is a flawed ideology that is sparking the chaos. And it could end that way. There could be a massive war. Maybe that the Iranians launch a bunch of missiles, you know, or somebody FedExes a nuke or something, and then the whole thing collapses or something else. But that's not what we want, you know. And also, when you look at the Soviet Union, it is true that the calamity, the continued chaos and the poverty and so on, you know, brought it down. But it was also a very intellectual thing. When you look at the history of the Soviet Union, you can see that the ideas were spreading. You know, Mikhail Gorbachev, a lot of people behind the scenes that they were his economic advisors, little by little, they knew that the whole thing was collapsing. That, you know, I'm a big fan of the Austrian School of Economics, and I know Adam too, Mises and Hayek and those guys, you know, and I think Milton Friedman, you know, very famous Jewish economist, he even said that Friedrich Hayek's book, like The Road to Serfdom, did so much behind the scenes to change the climate, you know, that ultimately helped bring down the Soviet Union. So it's just a combination of many things. I mean, we want, and remember, I understand how a lot of Israelis are really concerned and they can't possibly see a way out. But remember, Russians today are way better off once the whole system collapsed and they have peace and free markets and trade.
Jorge, I'm getting up, but I still hear you. So just keep talking.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't know how else I got into this tangent, but it is a combination of many things. It collapsed because of the economic chaos, and there was just enough revolutions. But again, the revolutions that were going on, they could have been clamped down by Gorbachev. Gorbachev knew that there were already a lot of little separate movements. People were not going along with the bureaucracy. He could have clamped down, and there were a lot of hardliners that were pushing him to clamp down, just like they clamped down in the Czech Republic, in the Hungarian Revolution. But we had enough suffering and enough minds were changed that the Soviets finally decided to let it collapse. And it's one of the very encouraging signs is that, remember, Putin was once a KGB agent. He was one of the people tasked with keeping the disastrous ideology going. Yet eventually Putin himself changed his mind. And he has written a lot about, you know, how communism was a failed system and we needed to move towards free markets and so on. So Yossi Cohen, for a future leader of a one-state Israeli-Palestine solution, and he's one of the former Mossad chiefs. And I can totally see that. We just need to have that beacon.
Okay, well, in honor of what you said, I changed my shirt.
Oh my God! Thanks.
You wanna give a little background?
No, you tell the story of that one.
So I actually met Jorge a few months ago in New York, and he gifted me this shirt. This is John Mises, Ludwig von Mises. You just name dropped him, right?
Yeah.
And then there's a quote. It says, "All reasonable men are called upon." I'm reading upside down. So, are called upon to familiarize themselves with the teachings of economics. This is in our age the primary civic duty. Ludwig von Mises. Okay. Well, I'll wear this for the rest of the stream. I don't know anything about him or if I agree with his ideology. My views on economics, I think, are a little bit different from yours, but I am definitely open to your worldview. Like I don't outright reject it. You very well might be right with your economic worldview. I'm just not as convinced that you're right as you are. But that's not the topic of today's conversation. So given your thoughts on defeating defeating this intellectual error with better ideas. How do you see that actually playing out in the Israel-Palestine paradigm when we are dominated and ruled by people who are very strong in their belief, which you find to be an intellectual error?
I mean, I think we're seeing a lot of progress made. Like I mentioned earlier, we have the new historians, even Benny Morris, who is very supportive of Zionism. I think he's done a great job of just getting us closer to the truth. And you had Ilian Papa. I mean, I understand some of these guys may have certain biases and so on, but there's enough history to know that we can change our minds, that we can see all this chaos as an error. And everything is that because, the Zionists, just like the Soviets, it's the same thing like the Soviets, right? The Soviets, they had their intellectuals, their historians. And to them, they had their own bias, they had their own theories, which were ultimately flawed, that created their own little echo chamber. And I just believe that the same thing has happened with the Zionists. But I think within the Zionist world, right, the new historians are Israeli themselves, right? If Jorge, some Cuban immigrant is telling you things, it's not going to be as impactful as Benny Morris, as Tom Segev, and all of those guys. So I really do believe that the Israelis themselves have already shown that a lot of Zionism was just kind of a mistake. And I think it's just a matter of using all this chaos. There's more people are looking at this right now because of the chaos. And I just hope that with what you're doing and what Adam is doing, and there are many people out there trying to find a solution, and I just hope that we can coalesce something in time that can lead more people. And just like the Berlin Wall came down because a lot of people saw things differently, we can do it peacefully. And that's why I think it's so important, to have some kind of one-state solution where we can show everyone how we can have a transition towards peace. I think that's a very important piece because there's, like I mentioned earlier, House brought up, if we just pull the plug tomorrow into some kind of one-state thing, it'll be total chaos. So we just have to keep, doing what we're doing here. But I think there's enough education already out there.
But you mentioned the new historians, but the new historians are either, some are Zionist, others are just considered radical figures that have no respect amongst Israeli society. So the new historian, the new historians are not like these prominent, influential figures in Israel. When you look at the whole political class, the media class, the intellectual class in Israel, they're all very Zionist. They're not having conversations about it being an intellectual error. It's a close to non-existent conversation amongst Israelis. So given this being the current state, how do you actually generate this conversation? I would say it's a conversation happening abroad, right? But it's certainly not happening within Israel.
Yeah, I'm curious, and maybe you can elaborate, like maybe how popular is someone like a Benny Morris? It is true that Benny Morris is still like a Zionist, but I'm sure Benny Morris he's very critical, of Israeli history, and he would be far more sympathetic towards some kind of future one-state solution. I have a feeling he would be. But I do think that if we can just
Benny Morris is the most Zionist of all the new historians, and he's the most respected of them. That's not a coincidence. But he would not support one binational state. That's not Benny Morris wouldn't.
Now it's very right now we're seeing, and this has been discussed a lot, how there is a growing split between the Jews in the United States, like the New York Jews who voted for Mandani. So, and I remember a little while ago there was an article where some Zionists, some Israeli Jews were very upset about the New York American Jews for not being Zionist enough, being patriotic enough, and that kind of thing. So I really do believe that if we can just get a movement within the New York, the American Jews, that is far more sympathetic towards the kind of one-state solution, once we win those guys over, it's over. It's all about changing minds. But I do think that within the United States, especially here in New York, where the Jews here get along, with everybody else. Yeah. Again,
So I would say what strengthens your point is that American Jews over time are understanding Zionism to be a bad idea. That's true. So I think there's a case to be made that we're seeing this happening in the United States amongst Jews and amongst just Americans in general and Westerners in general. It's not happening within Israel. So now we need to see how the views of the international community can directly impact the actions of Israel, which I think they certainly can. but I think that should probably be our focus, because the conversation within Israel is close to non-existent. The Overton window is like very, very narrow. Like the media in Israel is considered left-wing to Israelis. Like Israelis would say most media is left-wing. If you were to watch it, you would think it's like far right, fascist. Like it's so far from left-wing. The only thing that's left about it is that it's like anti-Bibi, but there's nothing left-wing about it. But in Israel, it's still considered to be liberal media. So it's interesting, but there is no real liberal media in Israel. Well, that's not true. You do have the human rights organizations like B'Tselem and Breaking the Silence and 972 Magazine and Haaretz. So that you do have them. That's true. Yeah, Haaretz. And interesting, my whole family is very right wing. My grandfather, he's like an older generation intellectual, also very right wing, but he reads Haaretz every day. That's the newspaper he reads, and the reason he reads it is because he finds them to be the most sophisticated. So he doesn't agree with them. He strongly disagrees with their left wing spin, but he says they're just classier, they're more sophisticated than a lot of the right wing ones. So it's interesting that he reads it. So I take that back. When I said there's no left wing media, I'm talking about like news, like the actual news that you watch. But in terms of publications, right? You do have Haaretz and 972, and they would be solidly left. And yeah. Anyways,
and it doesn't have to be a left or right thing. I mean, there's a lot of right, very like religious Jews. There's a lot of Jews that really believe in private property and equal rights for everyone. I'm sure there's a lot of those things in Israel too. I think. I mean, you know far better than me.
Yeah. Cool. Well, any final thoughts before we bring
no, thanks a lot for
awesome, Jorge. This is great. Thanks for having on. Dev says, is Adar celebrating Pride Month on a stream with the filters? Yep. Let's do it. Hold on. Wait, where is it? I still don't know how to work this. And there we go. Wait. No, seizure alert. Seizure warning. Okay, cool. Boom, boom. Yeah. Happy Pride Month. And we're talking about the original flag, not the new one with all the other colors. I reject that. So I don't want to sound hateful, but the new flag, I don't know if I could get behind that. I don't know if I'm as open. Do we want to, whatever. This is about me asking questions. Ask me my thoughts on LGBTQ stuff. LG cool. LGB cool. T questionable. Q don't even know what that means, but we'll talk about it another time. Anyways, and I don't mean this with any disrespect. It's more so just the ideological basis of all these movements, what they represent, how they explain things. They're not, in my opinion, as equally compelling as one another. Like there's a very big difference between your physical attraction to somebody, which is not something, it's just something you feel. So it exists, whether you're born with it or it's something that's triggered in childhood, it's still not a choice. That's very different from being born and believing that you are a different gender. That to me is far less of an objective measure and much more easy to contest. And there's a lot more, call them inconsistencies in those claims, but we could get into that another time. Careful, don't get canceled. Yeah, thanks, D-Pen, but if I haven't been canceled already, it's not going to be that gets me canceled, right? I also am self-employed. What's anybody going to do, you know? Anyways, thank you, Jorge. So it's funny, you know, people, when people hear my views on Israel-Palestine, they think I'm like a just traditional lefty, but there's a lot of things that I'm not in just squarely in the leftist camp. Immigration, for example, I'm not fully aligned with the left. I'm definitely didn't agree with the wokeness and what they were trying to push. I have questions and concerns about the trans ideology and what they're pushing. But I will say that, you know, on that, I still fundamentally believe we need to treat all people with dignity and respect. So even if I disagree with your views or your identity or am not fully convinced by what you're saying, I still think we should treat people with dignity and respect. And I will affirm somebody's gender if it's important to them. So, anywho, feel free to ask me about that on another stream. Kareem, we're bringing you on.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Kareem, what's up? Are we going to talk about Greater Israel?
Shabbat Shalom, Juma Mubarak.
Juma Mubarak,
Shalom
Habibi.
Baraka.
Shabbat
What's
Shalom.
up, Habibi? Todo bien, okay? Everything okay? Adar, I want to first and foremost salute you. In I didn't know that you're such a courageous, like I said in your stream, noble person, because it's difficult to sometimes go against the current and have the balls or the courage to speak on controversial issues that could get you in trouble. So big salute to you, man. Even though we have different views sometimes of certain things, I respect you and I appreciate you. So just wanted to share that for the floor before we get started with anything.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So first I wanted to mention something that Atreus was picking up. My good friend Atreus, obviously I hate to be in disagreement with him on some of his views because I appreciate the guy so much. But just want to mention something about, I understand and I've eventually come to understand how a lot of the Jews feel a sense of heritage towards the Holy Land, and I understand the argument or the narrative that says, okay, so Jews belong in Israel or belong in Jerusalem or belong in the Holy Land. And I can understand the sense of affinity towards that, but it shouldn't be at the expense of people already living there, because I cannot say this land is more mine than yours, because all land is for everyone, right? So that's what I view, at least. So I'm not really making a question as much as I'm making a statement, and I'm open to a question, let's say, follow up, let's say. So I'm just making it easier for you, Adar, to drop the beat on me, you know?
Cool. Well, so what would be your ultimate solution for Israel-Palestine?
Well, it's Atreus and I, we always have these conversations about what would be an ideal scenario for peace in the Middle East. I like to cut this long story short. I don't believe there will ever be a peace in the Middle East because it's very difficult to do a sense of justice towards either side. You know what I mean? There's been atrocities done for both sides, but I just like to open a parentheses here and say that there is a difference between extremist, terrorist Islam and actual Islam. You know what I mean? I am a practicing Muslim. I'm very proud of that. And I do not condone violence to civilians in the form, you know, that happened in those events, you know what I mean, that we're talking about. That being said, it is true that whatever reparations can be done to the Palestinian people will never be enough, because there's been a very unjust treatment of certain minorities and certain populations in the past 50 years. I'm not talking only in Gaza situation, but I'm talking about, you know, for a while, you know? So it doesn't seem like this is going to be solved by a signing of a peace treaty. I think we're just postponing a war in a large sense. I'm sorry I'm not answering your question in the way you would have liked me to answer it, Adar.
It's okay.
But honestly, that's my view of it. I think a good start would be to understand one another, and that's, we are doing the peace process, which is this conversation is, to my mind, we should replicate this on many levels, because even though we have different views, I mean, for example, me and Andreas, me and forgot his name now, other people who are of from the group of Jewish descent, we've had like really constructive conversations, and I'm sorry if I forget your names, guys. But at the end, dialogue is the key, understanding each other. And I was telling Andreas just a couple of hours ago, we as a Muslim Arab nation are in the lowest point of civilization we've ever been. because there is a large sense of illiteracy rates. There is a large sense of ignorance. People hate without knowing. People don't even know their own faith and they judge. And I feel we as Muslims, we need to have an obligation to know more, educate ourselves more. And obviously the other side needs to be a bit, I guess, more empathetic against. But with our ignorance, we arm the opposition to take advantage of our ignorance, I guess. So that's my point.
So, okay.
Sorry, I talked too much.
No, yeah. So you kind of support the Muslims having like a new golden era where they become super educated and more unified. That's essentially your view.
That's good for everyone. It's good for business.
The people I respect most in this world are the people who look to their own group and reflect on how their own group could change in order to be better, rather than just blame everybody else. So one of my biggest problems with Jews and Zionists is that they blame everybody else for the problems they face. They don't say, how are our actions, how do our culture, our decisions leading to our problems? It's always them. And then it's very controversial for a Jew to say, hey, wait a minute, we need to look within. But this is also the same with Muslims, right? Most Muslims just blame the Jews for their problems.
Easy to blame the other.
Yeah, blame absolutely. The Jews, blame America. But the best thing Muslims could do is to actually look within and make changes within their own society. So I do agree with that. I don't think others should be doing that, right? So there's the difference between somebody talking about their own community and how it can change, and then somebody from without the community demonizing and dehumanizing in order to justify harm against that group, right? Because normally when it comes from within, it's not for the reason of justifying harm. But when the critique comes from without, almost always the reason they're doing so is to justify harm against that group. True. So we should look at it very different. So I do respect people who want to change their own culture.
If I may, with a point, if I may, sorry I interrupted you. The point that I always say, if my house is being robbed because I left the door open, I shouldn't be blaming the thief. I should be blaming myself for leaving the door open. You know what I mean? And this situation with the whole Israeli conflict, the situation in the Middle East would have been completely different if we as Muslims, Arabs, whatever you want to categorize us, the Orientals, whatever, were organized and united, It would have been a different scenario. I mean, we had Jews, you mentioned it, I think, Adar, before, Jews living in Constantinople, in ancient, well, not ancient, in the Ottoman Empire. I mentioned as well in the Al-Andalus, Jews and Christians, Muslims were living under a golden age of Islam, and we got along, unless there was specific situations of violence with, isolated incidents. Mostly people got along. There was a flourish of business, of ideas, of culture, of knowledge, and people mostly got along. It is true that some Muslims are unfair and treating certain minorities as second-class citizens, and I recognize that fact as being wrong, because it's incompatible with Islam. Everybody is elevated in his sense of piety and his sense of devotion towards his family and his society. So what I'm trying to say, basically, and sorry, Adar, I'm dropping you all these knowledge on you, or ignorance, whatever you want to call it. To my mind, we should blame ourselves before blaming the other, and that's part of what monotheism teaches us. Love thy neighbor, empathize, that kind of thing.
Right. But so what do you ultimately think? Do you support one state, two states, or do you more look at it in
at this point? It's a point of no return, because whenever peace is going to happen, you're going to have a generation that's going to come up that has lived that war and is going to have hate in it. And terrorism, hate breeds more hate. This is how terrorism is born, out of conflict, out of unfinished business. And this is where extremist Islam happens. I mean, you're a man of former military. I think you have some knowledge of geopolitics in a large sense from my understanding of your reading of the world. And the way I interpret it, Adar, is that we are inevitably putting seeds in the ground to have another wave of terrorism. Because we're creating a hate, we're creating a sense of injustice, and this is never going to end. because those kids who just lost their parents or their brothers, they're gonna come up and they want to come revenge inevitably. Even if you lose your parents, you're not gonna put the other cheek. It's difficult. It's easier said than done. You know what I'm trying to say, Adar? So to answer your question very easily and remotely, how do I see a future in the Middle East? I see it very badly, unfortunately.
Is this because there's a religious prophecy, or is this just based on your assessment?
I don't want to get into my apocalyptic narrative. I think Atreus must be laughing his ass off now if he's listening to me. He knows exactly where I'm going with this messianic prophecies. I don't want to get into that too much, but from a geopolitical perspective and from a social equality perspective, okay, let's talk real facts, you know, not only superstitions about religion or whatever. I like to think that it's difficult that we reach let's hold our hands and sing Kumbaya scenario, because there are very different poles, and it's beyond Arabs and Jews right now, or Muslims and Israelis, or whatever we want to categorize the two. It's elevated into a level that other parties, my mother is Spanish, you know this, Adar. My father is Egyptian, rest in peace. And in Spain, there's a very big anti-Israeli sentiment because of the incidents that happen in Gaza, you know? And people are starting to have different tendencies. We can see this in Ireland as well. There's a lot of anti-Israeli sentiment, you know? So what I'm trying to say is that, big shout out to Atreus on his comments, one day we'll hold hands and sing Kumbaya. He's fucking hilarious, that guy. But what I'm trying to say is that I feel like it's a point of no return right now. It's going to be very difficult to achieve a peace in the Middle East, honestly.
Okay, fair. We're gonna.
I think Benny wants to jump in.
Yeah, we're gonna bring Benny on. Wait, so you're half Spanish, like from Spain, half Egyptian?
Yeah, my mother is Spanish Catholic, devout Catholic. My father, rest in peace, just passed away 2 weeks ago. Is Egyptian.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
I was born in. Thank you. I was born in the UK, in London. As you can see, thank God I don't have that British accent. I fucking all right, innit? No, man, I don't have that British accent, thank God. But I was born.
Oh, that was a very specific British accent, though. What was that, like South London?
Yes, I could do different accents too. Yeah, I could do all that bullshit, you know. So anyway,
you know, but now that you mention it, the way you look exactly like somebody who would be half Egyptian, half Spanish. Now that you mention it, so I see it.
I've been told that I look exactly like a narcos drug dealer. You know, like a
yeah. Well, no, but so you know when you mix Egyptian and Spanish, you get Colombian. That's just straight up fact.
I think so when you mix Spanish and Italian, you get a fucked up situation. That's the truth.
Anyways, thanks for joining, Kareem, and I'm sorry about your father.
Thank you for having me, man. Sorry if I took too much of your stage time, man.
No, great chatting. It was good talking to you. All right, Benny, we're bringing Benny on. Oh, and I see we have a bunch of new viewers and commenters here on YouTube. But thanks for tuning in. If you like what you see, subscribe. I'm not the most consistent streamer, but I'm in and out here and there. We talk about Israel-Palestine stuff. I'm an Israeli. I don't identify as a Zionist. Just trying to do my small part to achieve peace and justice on the land. So if you like what you hear and see, stick around. Great to have you. And you're welcome to join our Discord community as well. I will drop a link to all our new members. And Benny, what's up, my fellow Israeli non-Zionist?
Hey, Dar, how's it going?
Good.
I wanted to bring up a particular angle here that I think is important. My positions are very near yours, I think. So I don't, I don't think this would be very interesting in a sense of like conversation. It would be a little bit of an echo chamber, but I just wanted to challenge the heading of this conversation, or not even challenge, but frame it a little bit, that it's Israel-Palestine, and it comes across as Israel versus Palestine. And I think that's a little bit of, at least where I'm standing, that's a big big part of the problem, that we view it, we're very entrenched, or the conversation has become very entrenched in you're either pro-Israel or pro-Palestine. And I think that I'd much rather frame it as pro-peace or believe in peace or strive for peace versus strive for domination or war or power. And I think that's the only way we can kind of get out of it, because as long as we're separating ethnic groups, we're kind of stuck, each in our own group, and each side is kind of like fostering hate towards the other group. Whereas if you make it pro-peace, people who believe in living together, and then the solution is much easier. The solution becomes almost irrelevant. If you're pro-peace, any of the solutions will work. If you manage to convince enough people that there is a peace and that peace is achievable, and even if it doesn't seem that way now, it's the only cause worth fighting for, and dominance is not a cause worth fighting for. It's actually the problem. You'll solve there won't be the problem will kind of disappear if you convince the people that peace and living together and that kind of thing, and the kumbaya idea, as much as that is saying that is kind of making it laughable, but I really do think that that's the only way.
To just be wholly dedicated towards peace. Like that needs to be our primary focus as a people and as a nation.
Even if you think the other side doesn't want it right now, it doesn't matter. You still need to strive for it, because beating them and having the ultimate victory that Israelis fell in love with in the last 4 years and is not real. It's not a solution. And okay, go ahead.
No, yeah. And it doesn't seem to have made us any safer, right? And I think the U.S. capitulation to Iran was maybe a wake-up call to Israel that all these victories we thought we had the past few years are just an illusion.
Yes, I think you agree with me in that sense. I mean, the sentiment in Israel is that Trump is so terrible because he won't let us bomb more in Lebanon. And that if we could just bomb in Lebanon, without any kind of limits, we would solve the problem. And you and I know that isn't the case.
Yeah, there's this interesting idea within Israeli society and just Zionists around the world in general that the U.S. doesn't let Israel ever finish the job. And if the U.S. would just let them bomb more, then we wouldn't have any enemies anymore. And, it's I think it speaks to a little bit of a major flaw in the Israeli mentality, that we are convinced that the only way we could solve our problems is by being as violent as possible. And if we just have infinite capacity to be violent without anybody stopping us, then all will be good. And theoretically, that's true, because if you kill all your enemies, right, then you have no more enemies. But that's not even something we should consider to be realistic in today's world.
No, that wouldn't be good. That wouldn't be a good solution, to kill all your enemies. I mean, where would you be left in the end with a world that's full of devastation and dead enemies?
Well, this is, you don't need to convince me of this, but do you actually think that if you said that to your fellow Israelis, they'd be like, yeah, why not?
Well, I think the prevalent Israeli view, it's not everybody, but I think many Israelis say we want peace. Of course, if you dig down with them, they say we want peace. The other side, we can't. There's nobody to talk to. I think there are people here on this in this audience right now that say that, that, you know, of course I want peace. Of course I would love to have peace, but there's no one to talk to on the other side. And that's a mirror image of the Palestinian sentiment, by the way. A majority of Palestinians would say, we just want to live in peace, but you can't talk to the Zionists. There's
Right.
nobody there, you know, it's unreasonable. And I think that's kind of like, you know, without going too deep in it, it's kind of like goes to Jorge's idea of fallacies. It's kind of stupid because when both sides say we want peace, but the other side doesn't want to, it's kind of a blatant, you know, fallacy.
And what would you ultimately like to see as a solution?
I'm saying the solution, you know, once you create a narrative of we want to live in peace together, you know, we're both here killing the other side, obliterating the other side to smithereens will not solve the problem, or there's no solution in that direction. And therefore we have to live together and, you know, just treat each other as human beings and, you know, with respect and honor. Again, if you have a federation or if you have a one-state solution, it doesn't really, you know, it doesn't make that much of a difference. I don't think I need to put my mind to the actual mechanism of it so much. I need to convince more people on my side and have people that are like-minded on the other side convince people on their side, and somehow enlarge the camp that's kind of in the middle, that's the pro-peace camp, so that it's a majority on both sides. And then you can have, you know, and then you just sit together and work it out.
Okay, but you would feel comfortable in a one-state reality?
I would feel comfortable in a one-state reality. I would feel comfortable in a two-state reality, in a federation, you know, whatever. If I can get in a car and drive to India, that would be my dream.
You know, it reminds me of a conversation. I try to talk to as many Palestinian citizens as Israel as I can, just to learn more about their perspective and, you know, how they see things, how they identify. And I have learned through these conversations that most, you know, what we in Israel, we call them Israeli Arabs, but most of them do identify as Palestinian. Some will identify as Palestinian and Israeli, but very few reject the Palestinian identity. This does differ from individual to individual, community to community, but that's the most common response I got. But this one cab driver, I asked him if he identifies as Palestinian, and he said no. And I said, do you identify as Israeli? He said no. I said, so how do you identify? He said, I'm a Sunni Muslim. And I said, and what solution would you like to see? He said, I want to turn on my car and drive to Saudi Arabia without a single checkpoint. That's what I want. That kind of reminded me of what you just said. It's almost like he wants to go back to something akin to the Ottoman Empire, just not being ruled by the Turks, but having the entire Middle East be one empire of sorts that's kind of free, or just maybe a confederation, right? A Middle Eastern confederation that's just fully free to travel. So
yeah, I don't care as long as, you know, there's waterworks and highways and schools and hospitals. I really don't care how you frame it. You know, as long as people who are persecuted, whether they're Jews or Palestinians or Kurds or what have you, can have a safe haven somewhere in the world, and, you know,
right,
then have it. It doesn't have to be, you know, Jews can live as Jews if they so wish and have their holidays, and Muslims have their holidays, and whoever, you know, Druze and all the different people. That doesn't have to be a political thing.
Right. Okay, cool. So when the average Israeli will tell you that a one-state reality would lead to a civil war, what do you tell them?
I tell them that if everybody is having a peaceful life and everybody is making money and everybody is fulfilling themselves in whatever way they choose, whether it be through art or religion or science or whatever they want to do, why would there be a civil war? I mean, I think the real civil war that we're approaching these days is an internal Jewish civil war, but that's besides the point. The Palestinian Jewish civil war is secondary and not really.
Okay, cool. Anything else you want to share before we move on?
No, I think I said my thing.
Awesome,
Thank
Benny.
you.
Thanks so much. Cool. Trish, I see you have your hand raised, but we already did this. So maybe tell me what you want to discuss, and then I'll decide if it's a fit for what we're doing now. See, we have a question from Just Noor saying, did you see Israelis doing watch parties of Israel carpet bombing Lebanon? How can you de-radicalize Israelis at this point? So, it's a good question. And many Israelis say the same thing about Palestinians, that they need to be put in re-education camps and we can never have peace because they're too extreme. And I say the same thing to both, that people's views are not as deeply held as you would think they are. And given the right conditions, then their views will change quite quickly. So we need to change the underlying grievance that fuels this radicalization. And often the education system is not created in a bubble. So the education system is a result of other environmental conditions. So it's not as simple as saying, just change the education system. So for example, you often hear Israelis say, well, Palestinians need to not learn bad things about Jews. But even if they didn't learn anything about Jews, if they're still waiting at checkpoints and humiliated by Jews every day, they're going to reach their own conclusions. And you can't expect the people living under occupation to have like a super flowery education about the people oppressing them. So it's not the right way to look at it. It's really about changing environmental conditions and solving the grievance that leads to radicalization. Now, I do think it would be easier to de-radicalize Palestinians than Israelis because there's a much clear improvement in their conditions, right? Palestinians are oppressed. If you end their oppression, that's such a drastic change in environment that you should expect a drastic change in how they view things. It's much harder to create that drastic positive change in Israeli society because we're generally living these free lives, living good lives. So what is the change needed here to de-radicalize us? It's not ending our oppression because we're not oppressed, but so much of our radicalization comes from existential fear. We believe that we are surrounded by enemies and that our enemies would kill us all if given the chance. And the only way to survive on this land is to be aggressive and to be strong and to not compromise. So given a situation where there is a peaceful resolution and Israelis no longer feel a constant existential threat, then they will naturally become de-radicalized. I think we should feel confident in people's ability to change their minds given drastic change in their environment. Hope that answers your question. Yuri, let's bring Yuri on. We haven't had him yet.
Hello.
Yuri, what's up? And Trace, I see what you're saying. You want to talk about what Jorge said. So maybe we'll bring both you and Jorge on after this for a little debate.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Yuri. Okay, so what's on your mind? What are your thoughts on Israel-Palestine?
That it's something quite negative for you, but it's not a negative debate. I think that for me, you are more effective at Zionism than like 10 Zionists combined, right? That's how I see you. I see you more as someone who actually creates more Zionists. But I don't know. I think you see yourself in the opposite direction, right? You see yourself as someone who creates more.
If you could actually convince me that you're right, I might even commit suicide, honestly.
Yeah, I did say it was negative, right?
Anyways, I'm interested. Keep sharing.
Yeah, I'm just saying that I think if you do some polling in chat, say, oh, have you moved more to this side or that side? I think you will be quite surprised. I asked, we had a chat group the other day, a week ago or something, where we talked about it. And some of the Zionists said, yeah, I'm definitely more Zionist now than I was before. It's not because of you, it's just because of once you look into it, you kind of become more focused, like on defending your side, right? Maybe it's
Okay,
like,
but so
being
so
a
you're not
fan of a
so
football club.
you're essentially, you're not saying like my actual rhetoric is making people Zionist, but the existence of this community is making people more Zionist.
The existence of this community for sure, but also that you are such a left-wing or center-left Israeli, that kind of proves that Israel can encompass a lot of groups, a lot of people, a lot of opinions, and you can find someone in Israel who supports your opinion and your point of view, and that's something I think is surprising a lot of Americans, right? Because they probably think that all Israelis are narrow-minded, all have one point of view, or like extremists, or like far-righters. But then once you actually see that there's a lot of newspapers, TV shows that are quite progressive, I think a lot of people are surprised by that. And that's something you can only find out if you actually study up on the history of Israel and the conditions of Israel today.
Okay, interesting. So just to 2 points. One is the impact of this community. Two is my own rhetoric. So I don't think that if somebody hears an Israeli speaking the way I'm speaking, it would convince them that Israel's actions are okay or that Zionism is the right path. It might just, in a sense, humanize Jews in their eyes. And I think that's great. I do want, my goal is to humanize Israelis while demonizing Israel, because I think at the end of the day, you have 6 million Jews, 6 million Palestinians living between the river and the sea. We're going to need to find a way to live together. So if we could humanize one another, we're better equipped to be able to live with one another. But I don't see how anything I say would get people to support the state of Israel. Not certainly not when they're doing what they're doing. When it comes to the community, so this is a very interesting point, and I've actually heard this feedback from others, but on both sides. So the experience people have, they come, they want to interact with the other side, and then they have such a bad experience interacting with the other side that it radicalizes them, which is the opposite of what we want to do, right? We want to de-radicalize people and bring them closer to one another, but when you have negative interactions with the other side, you get further radicalized. This is a problem we recognize exists and that we're trying to solve with the actual platform we're building, right? So hopefully head on we'll have certain guardrails up and not have people be radicalized through conversations, but rather de-radicalized. But I do agree with you on the second point that the community has radicalized people. I'm not at all convinced that my rhetoric is making people support Israel. I would say I think more than anything, I've convinced a lot of Jews to be more critical of Israel, and I've convinced Palestinians and anti-Zionists to see Jews more as human. And again, maybe I'm biased and tooting my own horn, but that's what I would assume the result of my rhetoric has been. But
where do you have the population data from? 6 million Jews? It's a bit low, right?
No, I mean, you have 8 million. Israel's population is 8 million. 20% are Arab. It's a rough estimate, but it's around 6 million. It's around a 50-50 split.
I'm looking at Google searches, and it's definitely much higher than that. But
yeah, what's it saying?
Over 7.
So maybe it's
I'm just doing a fast search. I'm not like.
No. It might be 7 million and 7 million. You might be right. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. So it's approximately 7 million Jews and 7 million Palestinians. So I got rid of 2 million people. So 7 million, yeah. 7 million. But the whole idea is that it's many millions and it's like an equal breakdown. But yeah, thanks for pointing that out. 7. Cool. Anything else you want to share your thoughts on, like what solution you'd like to see?
No, I had another thing, but I will get to it later at some point.
Okay, cool.
Because it's not the same. It's not the same argument.
Thanks for almost ruining my motivation to ever stream again, but I'm still here. Talk soon, man. Cool. What do we have? Let's see. Atresh, before we do you and Jorge, I do want to bring on new people who haven't spoken yet. So we have Avianis, and then we're going to bring Shadow on. Avianis, what's up?
We actually used to be friends a couple of years ago. If you remember me.
Oh, cool.
I believe I used to be on under the name Shababnik, possibly.
Shababnik. I don't know if I recall
Mal Shababnik.
Or Shababnik. Was this in the Sulha server?
No, Mal.
Mal.
This was in Sulha, yeah.
Okay, well.
This is when I was like 15.
Oh,
I was
damn.
a 15-year-old Syrian Jewish guy. You remember me?
Were you the one that pretended to, you opened up a fake account and pretended to be a deranged Hebrew Israelite?
Yes, that was me.
Okay, good to see you, man. I'm glad you're finally of age and back with us. That was hilarious.
And guess what country I'm in? 1 second.
What, Palestine? Palestine?
No, not in Palestine. No, this is not Palestine. This is Israel.
Yeah, same thing. Same difference.
Not so much.
Anyways, I just about the context. So, what do I call you now? Avianis?
Avianis, yeah.
Avianis. So back in the day, Avianis created a fake user. He had his regular user where he was himself, but then he created a fake user where he pretended to be this deranged Hebrew Israelite, and he kept it up for like, I think well over a month. He would just join these chats and just debate people in the most deranged way possible, and then eventually, I don't know how we found out, but we made the connection.
I'll tell you how you guys found out. At a certain point, I mean, I was doing that accent and shit, man. And at a certain point, I got kind of sick of it. And I was in a VC with you. I was telling you, like, yeah, you know, like the ancient Israelites were all black men, and maybe you have some amount of black DNA, so maybe you're actually Jewish.
Right, and you said
all slipped.
Right. Okay. It's hard to keep it up.
Good times, man.
Yeah, anyways, so we're doing a different session today where it's all about questioning your beliefs and stuff. So what are your thoughts on Israel-Palestine in 60 seconds?
I would say that I would call myself a Canaanist. I mean, I consider Jews to more or less be essentially just a downstream of the Canaanite civilization. And I would consider the Arabs that live in Israel, to be very much traitors for rejecting their heritage and rejecting their traditions. They sort of moved on to this new sort of ideology where they see themselves as part of this broader Arab and Islamic world. And I'd like to change their perspective. I'd like to force upon them the Hebrew religion by the means of force, and to return them back to their original tradition.
What does that mean by means of force?
By banning the Arabic language, banning the Islamic religion, and banning the Christian religion, to be pretty frank.
Okay, interesting. So I always
my biggest issue with Israel.
Hold on. I always love when there's a new perspective, because it's like there's something just straight up authoritarian about what you're saying. I mean, it's
absolutely.
But it's like there's something almost progressive about it, because you're not calling for ethnic cleansing. You're recognizing them as their fellow long lost brothers and sisters, and you don't want to kick them out. You just want them to join us.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest issue with Israel.
Progressive fascism, let's go, baby. Anyways, yeah, keep talking.
My biggest issue with Israel is we function like an empire. We have like all of these territories that are under our command that we don't actually give any sort of meaningful rights to. And this creates this obvious like problem, right? Because you have this like third column element of society that's sort of like posited on destroying the state, not properly integrating, right? And I mean, there were two major solutions to this that I see as viable. One is the Israeli population accepting Islam, which I actually think is like is something that I wouldn't even necessarily be against. The second possibility is more or less having them assimilate to be like us. And I think that's probably the best solution, because we clearly have a more superior civilization. Our civilization is more progressive, it's more humanitarian, it's more open-minded. It produces better outcomes than the Arabic civilization. I mean, even if you look at the books translated into Arabic, right? Israel as a country has more books translated from foreign languages into Hebrew than the entire Arab civilization has translated yearly. Even if on like a 20-year scale. Every 20 years, the Arab world translates as much books into Arabic as Israel does into Hebrew yearly. So, I mean, you clearly see that
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know how much you could attribute to religion, to religion or other cultural stuff, because I could tell you to look at like Catholic data in Africa and tell me how many books African Catholics have translated, and then look at Catholics in the United States, and you're going to see something very different. It's not the religion. There's something else at play. But
I mean, wouldn't Catholics in the United States translate far more?
Well, it's just the culture between Christians and Catholics in the United States and in Africa and in South America are all vastly different. And I don't know if looking at the religion is
one culture is superior to the other. Clearly, I mean, obviously.
Produce
far greater outcomes.
So right, but it's not as simple as just saying the religion, right? There's other things at play that lead to these differences in culture.
Yeah,
but,
of course.
Right. Okay. But more importantly, why do you think it's important for us to all be the same religion? Because you said you'd be open to Jews converting to Islam, but you'd prefer for Muslims to convert to Judaism. But why can't we just have our own respective religions and kind of just be this Abrahamic, like have this Abrahamic reunion and just accept that, different faiths, but same family? What's wrong with that?
I mean, if you look at national states particularly, and like the sort of state apparatuses we have in the modern period, they're all posited again according to a specific identity, right? If you look at the most successful states, they tend to work like that. And very recently, like within the past 40 years, the West has tried unsuccessfully to create these sort of like multi-ethnic, multicultural states, and they never seem to function well. Like immigration, for example, in the West creates these massive social problems. And multi-ethnic states just traditionally don't work out, especially when you have like this dynamic in which one population sort of asserts, by means of colonialism and imperialism, it exerts its force in another population. Like these sorts of historical memories don't get forgiven unless you just simply assimilate the other population into non-existence.
How do you feel about the fact that 20% of Israeli citizens are Palestinian and they live relatively well, and there's relatively low violence from that population against Jews, and we didn't need to erase their identity or religion?
I mean, I would just look at the way that it's done, right? The way that it's done is by swarming the communities with Shabak. Any sort of meaningful Palestinian political expression is done in communities which are like majority Shabak informants. We spend an absurd amount of the national budget on policing this community, et cetera. And even still, they're not nearly as successful as, let's say, the mainstream population. I'm not like a racial essentialist. I don't believe in the superiority of one race against another. I think it would be beneficial for them, just on like a civilizational perspective, to be integrated within our own community.
Right, but
it would produce better outcomes for them.
Yeah, okay, it would produce better outcomes, but you're talking about something that has like close to no political feasibility. So if we're looking at the actual what's realistic, we see a situation where you have Palestinians living amongst Jews. This is a population that if they wanted to, they could harm us more than any other population. If they rose up against us, we'd be in huge trouble. Yet they very, very rarely do we have violence from Palestinian citizens of Israel against Jews. And then you have people of the same ethnic group and the same religion living just a few miles away that have a very different daily experience that they, given the chance, would like to harm us. Not all, but many more of them because of their experience. So doesn't that speak to, it's not about needing to erase an identity or a person's religion. More importantly, it's about creating environmental conditions that are hospitable towards peace, that don't make somebody want to rise up with violence.
I mean, it's a mix. They're talking about the conditions that we have in Israel as if it's done without violence. The way in which we've made the population that live here satiated has been via violence. We just don't do it in an outright way. Like, you know, like Hannah Darth, Slavoj Žižek, they talk about like a certain type of subjective violence as opposed to objective violence, right? Like the violence that we are committing is via the state. So thus isn't really read as violence, but in practicality, it is deeply violent the way that we control them. We're just asserting our will against them successfully. And you're saying that this is a proof of egalitarianism?
Well, no,
it's a proof of the success
but it's
violence.
the violence we impose on Palestinian citizens of Israel is only a fraction of the violence we impose on West Bank Palestinians.
Yeah, because it's subjective violence. It's through sort of non-physical means. We just infiltrate their communities, arrest every single person that would be a problem, and surveil them to no end. You know, like a couple.
No, but
weeks
wait,
ago,
hold on. That's not true. That's not true. We after October 7th, there was the Shabak arresting people doing social media posts. They didn't want there to be an uprising. But the idea that you have in Sakhnin, which is an anti-Zionist community within Israel, they'll fly the Palestinian flag. They'll do anti-Zionist marches.
What percentage of those people do you think are Shabak?
Like
give me an honest, meaningful estimate that you believe.
Of the population of Sakhnin?
Yes.
You could round it down to 0.
I would bet that you could probably round it down to 25.
No, what do you mean? I'm sorry, bro. That's not you don't have 25% of the Sakhnin population working for the Shabak. You don't. But it's still what you're saying just doesn't add up, because for all Shabak presence you have within Israel, you have it to an even higher degree in the West Bank. For every violence you think is being imposed on Palestinian citizens of Israel, you have a higher degree of violence imposed on West Bank Palestinians. The biggest difference is just the quality of their life. It's that one people, and it's far from a perfect situation. There's a lot we need to do to further improve the situation for Palestinian citizens of Israel, but they're not stripped of their dignity. They don't need to wait at checkpoints every day. They're not subject to violence to the same degree. They're generally equal. And when people live a generally good life and are not stripped of their dignity, they feel less inclined to engage in violence. Palestinians of the West Bank do not have that. They don't have much to live for. They don't see any peaceful means to achieve their goals. So when you don't see a peaceful mean to achieve your goals, violence generally ensues. But this is
they're satiated. Are the ones in the West Bank committing October 7th every single weekend? No, they're more or less they're living in relative peace and not even presenting very major security issues to us.
Relatively, but if you look at comparatively speaking, so for example, if you look at every single terror attack in the year 2026, you have something like over 90% of them is going to be from West Bank Palestinians, and the other 10% will be Palestinian citizens of Israel. But Palestinian citizens of Israel,
the West Bank terror problem is mostly ISIS, right? It's not really. It's an ideological.
Yeah, but hold on. But think about this. So the population that doesn't have could interact with us without security, right? Palestinian citizen of Israel, they could come into Jewish neighborhoods with knives. There's no checkpoints. If they wanted to rise up against us, they could kill. They could cause us hell that we might not even know how to deal with if there's a massive uprising from these communities, and they are free. They are essentially free to come attack us, and they don't. And then another population.
Don't you think there is a selection effect for the Palestinians that live in Israel? There was a selection effect in which the most easily satiated Palestinians were the ones that remained. The most submissive ones were the ones that remained in Israel. Well, there was a selection like during the Nakba, right? So what ended up happening is that the most aggressive ones fought and got kicked out, and the least aggressive ones stayed.
No, not quite. It was to some degrees, right? If you had some villages that were more extreme than others, they would be more likely to be ethnically cleansed. But a lot of it just came down to which militia was in which area and the means that they decided to engage in,
and also like
to deal with them.
Plain Palestinians and like the northern Palestinians were always far more secular than the ones that lived in the hillsides. Like if you look at Jenin, for example, Jenin had like this massive terror presence. I know I did an arrest there like a couple of days ago. And if you look at like what they what they believe. It's mostly not like this sort of like nationalist crime that's happening. It's mostly this deeply Islamist crime that's coming from ISIS. I think something like all of the terror attacks that happened in Israel since October 7th have all been from ISIS, like all of the lone wolf terror attacks within the past 5 years.
No, I don't think that's true.
You can Google it. Like I heard like a security official talking about this. I mean, I can tell you that personally.
Wait, hold on. So you're in the army now. You actually trust the security official assessment? Do not drink IDF Kool-Aid.
What did you do in the army?
I was in Golani.
That makes a lot of sense knowing you.
Why people say I'm more fitting for Nahal, but
No, I mean now you are, but I could see that you used to have like testosterone, and then you sort of like became longhoused.
Yeah, fair. Although my testosterone levels are still above average for my age, but maybe it's
How
just.
old are you? You're like 36.
Yeah, exactly 36. Good guess. Nice.
Anyways,
okay.
a couple of weeks.
Wait. I want to just get back on. I want to get back on this point. We've seen all throughout history. We have like thousands of data points that generally people, when their lives aren't good, when they're oppressed by other people, when they're put in a lower status than other people, when they don't have dignity, when they're not respected. These are conditions that generally are going to lead to bad societal outcomes and just actions against the people oppressing them. And I don't think we need to overcomplicate why there's a very big difference in violence that we see from Palestinian citizens of Israel compared to West Bank Palestinians. It's just that one lives a much better life. And when you live a much better life and you have interactions with Jews that aren't negative, right? Because Palestinian citizens of Israel, while they do face racism, they have daily interactions with Jews that are positive. So you start to see them as humans. When the only Jews you ever meet are settlers and soldiers and they don't treat you with respect, then you're going to think that we're evil and that you're going to think that harm against us is justified. So it seems the solution is not to, just try to go for these super unrealistic authoritarian plans that causes.
I think you're a Fed.
Okay, fair. You could say that, but
I'm not going to continue this conversation because I believe you're a Fed. Goodbye.
Wow, that was weird. That was such an interesting reaction. Okay, I was actually, I was enjoying their conversation. Wait. I'll be honest. At least make the case why I'm a Fed. You're the one who's currently engaged in the oppression of another people. I'm at least trying to free us from being oppressors. But yeah, why do you think
there's no way that you're not a Fed, bro? Like it just doesn't make sense.
All right, explain.
It's just like you just like sit on camera. You were in Golani, like you were in the IDF, and then somehow you just like woke up one day and you're like, you know what, like free Fakistan. Like, bro, you're a Fed, bro. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, you wanna actually know where my evolution came from?
Sure, tell me.
Cool. So I grew up my entire life learning the Zionist narrative. I was never taught to Palestinians. I was just taught the same shit you were taught. Our historic.
You're an American, or what type of Jew are you?
Yeah. I grew up in New Jersey. Yeah, born in New York, grew up in New Jersey. My entire life.
Where in New Jersey?
Randolph, North Jersey.
I'm so sorry.
It's a nice town, although all my big drug issues. I lost a bunch of friends to drugs, even though it was like a nice suburban town. But my dad's Israeli, 9th generation, so I'm technically 10th generation Israeli. My family moved to Ottoman Palestine from Lithuania to Ottoman Palestine in 1812. We moved to Tzfat, and then in 1814 moved to Hebron al Khalil and helped build the Jewish community there. I guess we were part of the anti-Zionist Hebron community at the time, but most of my family is ultra-Zionist, right-wing settlers today. Now, I had the
settlers
same.
Where?
Anywhere from like Gush Etzion, Kedumim, some hilltops and shit.
Like in Givaot and shit, or?
Yeah, all over. So my uncle has 11 kids, and their kids now have 50 children, and they're scattered primarily all over the West Bank. Now, I come from a very right-wing Zionist family. So I learned about our history on the land, about our persecution in Europe, and the beautiful story of our return to our ancestral homeland, and yet how we just can't live in peace because the Palestinians will never accept us, and they'll continue to fight us until we're no more, and that we need to defend ourselves against these people. I was not taught to hate them, but I was taught that we need to fear them and defend ourselves against them. So, I had this upbringing from a young age. In high school, being a very big troublemaker that barely graduated high school, I said, you know what? I'll make Aliyah. I'll join the IDF. It's what it means to be a good Jew.
You joined as like a Chayil Boded?
Yeah, exactly. I joined as a
through like where, like Gan Sabah?
Garin Sabar, yeah. Yeah, Garin Sabar, yeah. For those who are wondering, Chayil Boded is the status of a lone soldier. It's when you are a soldier, but you don't have family here, you get like special benefits. So I did that.
So you have like shaykhs to like, sorry, I'm speaking like a from stain. Do you have like a connection to people in like LCS and all these things?
What's LCS?
Like the Lone Soldier Center, things like this.
I used to volunteer for them back in the day.
What the, dude? What happened to you, bro?
Well, I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I'm getting there. So yeah, I was a big time Zionist. That just means there's still hope for you, And then after the IDF, in the years after the IDF, I started to just learn more about the world and start to just be more open-minded in general. And then I started learning more about the Palestinian narrative and about what they're actually experiencing and how they see us. And then I understood that the narrative I was raised on, part of it was just outright not true. The other part of it is
like
just
a bunch of taxi drivers, and they were like, they said it. أنا أحب يهودين. إني بياعي يهودين بالحال. أبد بإمك يشي بياعي جبان جبين. And like you believe them.
No, not at all. Not at all. I simply understood. I simply understood what we describe as our beautiful return to the land. Another people experience as settler colonialism. What we say is just a war is mass ethnic cleansing of another people. What we describe as just keeping our people safe is a brutal security apparatus, oppressive security apparatus in the West Bank. What we say,
and that's supposedly a bad thing.
Yeah, it's 100% a bad thing because it's not a necessity; it's a choice. What we say, just self-defense, is the mass slaughter of children. So yeah, I learned that the Zionist narrative is, for the most part, bullshit, revisionist, or just half the truth. And then when you learn the full truth, how can I hold these same beliefs that I used to hold? So obviously, the second you expose yourself to a much broader range of facts and narratives and understanding of the other side, it doesn't make sense to keep the same worldview. So I understood, okay.
So where did you like interact with this other point of view? Like, where did this happen? Academia, like a taxi driver?
Initially on Facebook, actually, back when Facebook, the golden era of Facebook, I started, there was a Facebook page called, there were two Facebook pages, one called Israel Loves Palestine and another one called Palestine Loves Israel. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? And they were just beautiful, writing this beautiful stuff. And then I was inspired by it. And then I started seeing Palestinians say shit online, anti-Israel stuff online. Like, and I would send them friend requests and start talking to them. And then I just got it.
So now you're an Omdim B'Yachad guy, like, basically.
Yeah. I support Omdim B'Yachad for sure. Yeah.
So like you like are part of their
that's standing together. I don't know if I'm an official member, but I've gone to protest with them. I've done protected presence with them.
I went to like during Jerusalem Day, I got into a fist fight with like two people.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I have to say that I won, I think.
Well, they have a value that they're not meant to get violent, even if they are experiencing violence. But
no, I didn't start the fight. They started the fight now.
Okay, well.
And the police was protecting them. Like the Magavni came, it's so disgusting how they just like suck up to Omdim B'Yachad and they don't give it, they like treat the settlers like they treat them like shit. Like during Jerusalem Day, I just got arrested for literally no reason. I was just like walking around the middle of the city and like someone was like, hey, show me your ID, whatever. And I got arrested. And it's just what it's like to be like, to be like any sort of right-wing sort of person.
Yeah, I'm getting Groyper vibes from you. Constantly like.
I like Groyper.
Well, it's just GoPro vibes that it's like you're constantly hateful and then you act like the victim. It's like, okay, well, you know, maybe.
How am I hateful towards? I love Omdim B'Yachad people. I think we need them as a country.
I wasn't even talking about Omdim B'Yachad. It's just you want to force convert a full population, you know? Although I would agree, you're not, there's something very interesting and almost, I respect about your ideology that if you're already that extreme, why not just support ethnic cleansing? But you're like, no, let them stay, just convert them. So it's interesting. I always appreciate a new perspective. But yeah, anyways, I was saying that's where my transformation came from, just meeting people on the other side, learning their narrative and trying to build just a more holistic understanding of the conflict. And now where I've essentially landed was over many years in a perspective of universal humanism, meaning we need to try to create systems and institutions that can protect human rights. Your rights should be protected regardless of your religion or ethnicity. This is true about Israel and Palestine as well. So I would support any solution that would protect the rights of the people, whether that's federation, confederation, or something else. I could get behind it if it protects the right of the people. I think we should always grab.
Who do you vote for?
Probably Yair Golan, but I hear that the Omdim B'Yachad people are launching their own party, so maybe them. If they launch their own party, then them, yeah.
I heard like a bunch of people that used to be part of Omdim are calling like Omdim B'Yachad a cult. What do you think of this? Do you think it has any truth?
Again?
I heard like a bunch of people in Omdim B'Yachad are like they used to be part of Omdim B'Yachad are now calling Omdim B'Yachad a cult. Do you think that's actually true?
I haven't seen any cult-like conduct from them, but I'm interested in knowing the experience these people have had. The most major critique Omdim B'Yachad get, and for those Omdim B'Yachad is standing together. That's like the direct translation in Hebrew. The biggest critique they get is actually from anti-Zionists that they're normalizers, right? They say, "What do you mean Jewish-Palestinian partnership?" Da da da. So I've seen a lot of criticism from anti-Zionists, but I think they're doing great work. They're courageous. They've done a lot. The protest they did during the Gaza war was pretty significant. I would vote for them. And yeah, I see Shachar Ziv here, just told me about them a few hours ago. So here we are.
So your perspective mostly changed from Facebook. Have your like interactions with Arabs actually fed into this narrative that you've created, or is it like?
Well, no. Facebook was opening the door, but then I started going to the West Bank and meeting them not as a soldier, but as like a human to human. I don't know if you know this, but in 2016, I went to East Jerusalem and I blindfolded myself with a sign, "I'm a Jew and I love you. If you love me back, give me a hug." Do you remember that? That was back in the Sulha days. So I
remember it, yeah.
Yeah, so I did something that people told me I'd get killed for doing, and I did it anyways. And then I start getting all these hugs.
You're not gonna get killed for having a sign that says that. I mean, like I've walked through East Jerusalem with like Al Bayt signs before.
Yeah. I mean, but you need to understand when my whole life I think these people are my enemy, and I'm being warned by fellow Israelis to not do that, and then I start getting hugs. That'll change the way you think.
How many hugs did you get?
We could watch the video and count, but it's probably like 10 hugs in 15 minutes, and then Magav came and told me I need to leave because it's dangerous.
I hate Magavnikim so much. Like I have a passion against Magavnikim.
Why?
Like. Because they just like beat up Jews for no reason in Yehuda V'Shamron.
Do they?
Yeah, they do. Like I've been on like settlements and shit, just like hanging out. And then Magav will like pull up and they'll just say like everyone has to get out, everyone has to get out. Like every other day, like you'll see on the hilltops like another person or another family is getting expelled from them. And then if you do any sort of like right-wing political activity in this country, Magav will just sort of like crash out.
Interesting. You guys should film that because I've never heard of that. And for those who don't know, Magav stands for Mishmar HaGvul, which is border police. But they're a pretty brutal force. They are aggressive. It's just normally their aggression. A couple
weeks ago,
their aggression is towards Palestinians.
I just got beaten up by them for literally no reason. Like I have it on video. Like I don't want to like publish it or anything. But I wouldn't mind sending it to you personally. I was just sort of like hanging out, and they just like sort of just like jumped on me and beat the shit out of me for just trying to go and protest against the Pride Parade.
Interesting. Somebody else today said they tried to protest Pride and they didn't let them.
Yeah, the Gavnikim, they're all like.
Well, hold on. If that's the situation, wouldn't you prefer that we all convert to Islam, because then there won't be a pride parade?
I wouldn't be against it.
Okay, so you do see some benefit over Islam than Jews, because Jews are constantly turning into progressives while Muslims don't.
And look, this is why I think, Adel, you need to embrace Islam. Like seriously, like there's someone you need to listen to. His name's Ahmed Musa Jibril. He will change your life, bro. Like Google Ahmed Musa Jibril, watch his videos.
I don't, but I'm an atheiist, so I don't know why you think I would be convinced by any of these Bronze Age
I'm an
theologies.
atheist. I'm an atheist as well. It's just purely for the aesthetic.
What, you wear the kippah because it looks nice?
No, I personally wear a turban.
Okay. I do have a kippah somewhere. I could put it on. It is Shabbat, you know? My friend knitted it for me. So, anyways,
you know where the whole knitted kippah thing started, right?
my family is Dati Leumi. We're kippah sulga. That's what we wear. But where's it come from?
It comes from during the whole like Bnei Akiva thing. What ended up happening is you had like all of these like modernish fucks who had their girlfriends knit kippahs for them. Seriously.
Wait again.
And like Haredim get all pissy about
these
it.
girlfriends would do what?
Yeah. Like knit their kippahs for them. And like Haredim like crashed out over the fact that like their girlfriends were knitting their kippahs for them.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, yeah, my family wears the knitted ones. You know, it's another interesting thing, and then we're going to move on to the next person. You know how you have the payas, right? You have the Haredim, and they have a curly payas, and then you have the settlers have the flat ones.
Yeah.
So there's no intentional difference there, but the difference actually points to a very different cultural culture between them. Their payas is curled by their finger. When they're sitting in the classroom, they're studying all day. They curl their payas as they study. The settlers are not Jews of the book; they're Jews of the land. So they're working the land. They're not. Their hands are being used to farm and build. So their payas are flat and straight. So that's interesting.
It's cool.
And then
one last thing.
Do you know those payas have a name? I just found this out.
What's it called?
The flat payas have a name. They're called. Hold on, my aunt just sent it to me. I need to tell you this. Gozambot.
Gozambot. What an Israeli name.
I know. Yeah, I have a bunch of family with the Gozambot. But yeah, okay. Final thoughts over to you. Then we'll move on to the next person. But I'm glad we reconnected. As much as we disagree, I found this to be a very interesting conversation, and I'm glad you're back.
What's interesting about it?
Well, that you first of all, you're intelligent and you have a very unique perspective. So it's just anytime I hear a new perspective, it challenges my thoughts and gets me to think about things differently. And find it entertaining. It gets boring hearing the same old arguments every time. We have massive ideological differences. We don't agree, but part of the point of this channel is to bring on people with vastly different views and have respectful dialogue. So I think we accomplished that.
One last thing before I go. So Adel, I am a homosexual and I would like to marry you. So this is my proposition to you. I would like to marry you right now. I have 3 camels in preparation for our marriage ceremony. Do you accept or reject my proposition?
Well, first answer this. If you're really gay, why'd you go protest Pride Parade?
My issue is that they're too pro-Israel. I'm really against Zionists and Kfirah and Zionists and so forth. So.
Okay, interesting. Well, I'm going to need to reject you because I'm straight. But I wish you the best of luck. Just make sure to wear protection because, it's dangerous out there.
Thank you, bro.
For sure.
Enjoy being a Fed.
Thank you, man. You see, is that homophobic to say wear protection? It might have been. I'm sorry. I realize that I just let whatever. Wear protection. It is dangerous out there. I was transphobic a few minutes ago also, so it's okay. And I was racist earlier. That's what we're here to do. The best form of hate is when it's equally distributed towards all people, right? It's very. So one of these days, my enemy is just going to clip one of these statements and use it against me, but I don't care. Yeah, just be equal and balanced in your racism, and you're fine. You know, it's all good. And as long as you're not treating others like, it's okay to be racist as long as you still treat people with dignity and respect. That's the general rule. Anyways, Shadow, what's up?
Hey, how's it going? Floor's yours. You're the one asking questions.
Yeah, cool. Real quick, D-Pen says he revoked my woke card. I never wanted a woke card, and I'm happy it's gone. So take that shit and burn it. Burn it with the new pride flag, the one I was hating on earlier. Anyways, Shadow, cool. We've gone to talk a lot, so I know a bit about your views. So let's see what direction we want to take this in. You've spent the past few years talking to many Israelis and Palestinians to try to find some reasonable solution. Based on those conversations, where have you landed? Like, what do you ultimately think? And high level, I don't mean like the how you get there, but high level, what solution would you like to see between the river and the sea?
Yeah, I think at a high level, both populations believe that they belong to all of the land. I don't think that you can pretend that there are two nationalist movements that just want self-determination. I think one group is perfectly fine being part of any sort of Arab Muslim polity as long as they get to have access and live on all of the land. Anything is more or less fine. Another group is deeply hyper paranoid about their status as a minority, and they're willing to make extreme concessions. And then everything is downstream from how much leverage they have up to that point. So I actually think there are tremendous gains to trade. I think that there's a lot of settlers who want to be able to live in the West Bank without having to fight the entire world to make that possible. And I think there's a huge number of Palestinians that just want to be able to live in the same village that their grandfathers were in. And if they don't have exact equality or whatever political representation a Western liberal might say is necessary for society to match their moral thresholds for acceptability, I think they're completely okay with it. So I actually think that any solution where everyone can live anywhere and there's no displacement and there's no violence in the long run is acceptable. And it's just a question of getting enough people to socialize to the point where they realize that's actually a stable default outcome rather than a recipe for, eternal struggle for dominance.
So you see like the ideal solution really as one binational state, but the means to get there is by
No. One binational state would be absolutely horrible because every time that works, there's a struggle for power. I think the only thing that would work is two binational states. I think Palestinians need to have some unlimited amount of residency within Israel. And Israelis need to see in practice that there are Jews living as a minority without IDF protection in the West Bank, and that everything is more or less okay. And that's step two, right? Step one is to just have enough social integration where one group doesn't think ethnic cleansing is okay, and the other group doesn't think that unlimited amount of violence in response to injustice is okay, because that violence is going to be directed at some fraction of people who are actually good people that you consider friends. So I think that's step one. And I think step two is basically two binational states for a bunch of practical reasons. And that's actually where you can actually have trade, because then you can have the settlers going to the West Bank and you get Palestinians to have the right of return. And then, 150 years from now, we might just have a confederation along the lines of Europe. But at that point, who cares? We might just have a world government, or AI would have put us all in a zoo because we would have tried to replace it with another model and it doesn't want us to change its preferences. I don't really care about those.
Interesting. So okay, two binational states. So it's not just a two-state solution where one's Jewish, the other's Palestinian. It's actually both states are binational. But what you see is that it allows there's not a struggle for power because there's a large majority in each state of one ethnic group. So you don't have that fight for power, but you still have full equality between all people living there.
So two states would mean separation. And it wouldn't address the desires of the people who are most violent, right? The most violent Palestinians want all of the land. The most violent Israelis want to conquer Hebron. If you have two states and there's no mixing of those populations, there's no way to restrain those radicals. You need to have some release of the pressure. So you need to have the minority of Jews who really want to be in the West Bank to be able to live in the West Bank. You need to have the minority of Palestinians who really, really want to live in Israel to be able to live in Israel. So yeah, I think you have to have two binational states, and they have to be like 80-20 or 70-30 so the majority doesn't feel like there's going to be a struggle for power.
Okay, cool. What do you think should be the next step to achieve such a thing?
I think the first step is to just have social interaction so people see each other as human. I think the second step is to create some sort of functioning Palestinian politics, because I think right now there's basically no free speech anywhere other than East Jerusalem. So we basically need to create a situation where the Israeli government thinks that it's in their political interest for there to be some sort of powerful functioning Palestinian politics, which right now we're not there. They're fine with Hamas in Gaza. They're fine with a very corrupt sort of like PA Palestinian overlay on the occupation in the West Bank. I think we need to somehow persuade them that it's in their interest for there to be democracy in the West Bank. And then we need to support moderates to win those elections.
Okay, cool. I normally would stick around a little bit longer, but there's a bunch more people and it's already midnight here. So just any final thoughts before we move on?
Nope. Whoever Kind is has been very kind to me, and at some point I'd want to hear more from him.
Awesome. Thank you, Shadow. Talk soon. Okay. Atres and Jorge, I know we said we would do a little debate, but we'll need to do that offline. We're going to do that we could do that in a VC. I do want to give the floor to Serge and first Ariel, and then we'll take it over to VC. Autovan goes in quote, "I can't be racist because I hate everyone equally." Yeah, I would. Maybe since we opened the door, let me just explain a little bit more of my philosophy here. Generally, groups that are hated historically are hated because for many reasons, but they're often overrepresented in behaviors or qualities that are just off-putting. And what this does is, because humans have this way to simplify and then just have this just very binary worldview, we kind of just categorize things as good and bad. I think this is probably just a survival instinct, right? We didn't have the necessity or capacity to intellectualize things as hunter-gatherers. It was this mushroom good, this mushroom will kill you. That's a predator, that's prey. Good food, bad food, very binary, good, bad, right? That tribe is dangerous, that tribe is a friend. So the second you start to see behaviors that are undesirable or off-putting from a group, we very easily start to attribute that to the entire group, and that's where prejudice and then racism and other forms of hate come from. So the solution to this very human reaction is to really continuously train ourselves to view all individuals with dignity and respect, or just get to know somebody as an individual despite the group they come from, and then make your judgment on them based on who they are. Like MLK Jr. said, judge people by the content of their character and not the color of their skin. Amazing value that we need to live by. That said, I think in the right settings, it's perfectly okay to acknowledge these qualities that are off-putting in a lighthearted jest. So, do I understand why Jews are hated? Obviously. Do I get why blacks are hated? Yeah, for sure. Muslims, duh. Indians, obviously. Like, come on, guys. Just look around. And I could keep going through all these groups. Like, there's just, it's not for no reason. Now, I love all these groups that I just mentioned, but they got their problems, And by problems, it's like their overrepresentation in certain qualities that other people don't like. So treat all people with respect, but it's okay to let out. We all have a little darkness in us. If we could let out that darkness with dark humor in a non-harmful way, do it. So I'm a big supporter of casual racism in a setting that's not offensive. Yeah. So a little casual racism never killed anybody. Now, racist policies and acting on hate does kill people. So time and place for everything. And that's maybe another reason why I struggled with woke ideology, because it was just too sensitive about all this stuff. Anywho, Ariel. And I know I mentioned like 4 groups, but there's others. Don't think those are the only 4. There are others. Dev says this feels like a former 4chan poster trying to be relatable. Sorry, I don't know. Well, I just I'm just being honest about my view.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I hear you. I see you.
So yeah,
I like the kafia. How's it going, man?
Thanks. This is a Sudra. This is a kafia.
Oh, you're wearing both.
Yeah,
Cool.
but something I thought was really interesting. So the other guy, what was it, like the troll, basically? I thought it was interesting. He described himself as a Canaanist, but then he thinks everyone should convert to either Judaism or Islam. And they're actually, like, I'm sure you know a bit about like the OG Canaanist movement.
Yeah. Somebody actually just recently told me about it. It was like in the 70s or something. Or was it even before? Was it even prior?
Like the 20s.
Okay.
It was the 30s, and so it was also like kind of connected to the was it like Art Deco movement, where you have like the revival of like, you know, Egyptian mythology within like that type of thing, but in all these different cultures. And so that's also around the same time you have a rise in Phoenicianism, that with that really becoming more of a thing in the 70s. But in, you know, Palestine, you had this Canaanist movement that I forget what, like basically they were essentially, they wanted to destroy the Jewish and like Palestinian Arab identity, which they saw as primarily Muslim and obviously also Christian, and create this new Canaanist ideology that wasn't like necessarily it wasn't a religious ideology. It was more so a type of like I mean, for lack of a better term, there were a lot of overlaps with like the Nazis, to be completely honest. And I think some of them were also like involved with Lehi. So, but my point though is there's a modern Canaanist movement which espouses a lot of what I think people, regardless of what the solution is, people who genuinely are looking towards peace and justice and you know, reconciliation and rectification for what has happened, but also looking forward and seeing that, I mean, for better or for worse, like we said before, there's 14 million people between the river and the sea, and no matter what percentage of which wants the other percentage of the other gone, like there's people on both sides who would sooner die than leave their land. And so at the end of the day, it's not just about how do we find peace, but how do we find peace in this land together in a way that isn't just like, I'm almost reminded of this one part from Tanakh. I'm not like super religious, but I do find a lot of inspiration. There's this one reference that peace, but there is no peace, like this idea of false peace. And I think that's what a lot of people sense in a lot of like, especially Israeli government, like Hezbollah, where you see stuff about, you know, Israel being a place where Jews and Arabs live harmoniously. And like, I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but it also completely ignores, you know, the reality of what's been done to Gaza and what's well, not currently, but like what also has been done to the West Bank. And I guess also just to share a bit of my own perspective, I really connect to the like spiritual ideology of Rav Menachem Froman, who he was actually friends with Yasser Arafat. He actually met back before they were like a radicalized group. He met with the head of Hamas, was it Sheikh Yassin? And like he really he believed that because the Palestinians were his neighbors. I mean, he was also a settler. He lived in Tekoa, but he believed because the Palestinians were his neighbors that he should treat them as he wanted to be treated. And what personally has really like woken me up is the fact that obviously there's more of their ancestry than just that, but a lot of Palestinians, a majority of Palestinians have ancestry that at one point was Jewish, and even more recently like the reason why there's so few practicing Samaritans, now is because a lot of them did convert to Islam for a number of reasons. But the point is that like their descendants are the Palestinians. They're from the land just as much as Jews, if not more, in the sense that they never left. And I think the idea of who belongs to the land more is like an identity politics thing, and all it does is further divide people. But like personally, as a Jew and someone who I feel a very close connection to the land of what I call Canaan, because it's just in my mind the most non-offensive thing you could say, because regardless of who might hear you, it's like nobody can actually disagree the land is called Canaan. But because of that, I feel a strong connection to that land, to everyone in the land. And it just doesn't feel right to me that people that we as Jews are connected to, but also just who are from that land, have been dispossessed of it and still are being dispossessed of it. Sorry, I know I can ramble.
No, I appreciated what you said. So how are you aware of the new Canaanite movement?
Yeah, I'm involved with it. I think you've talked with Elijah Kallenberg, right?
Yeah, we've had him on here a bunch. Yeah.
Yeah,
cool.
He's a really good friend. I actually was so inspired by him. I started a local chapter at my University of Atidna, which is the movement he founded, which is basically trying to create spaces for conversation and dialogue between Jews and Palestinians. And obviously it's open to students of all backgrounds. But it's taken like 2 years, but I finally got it started. But what I was going to say, and I think this was kind of interesting how Avianus was trying to like diminish your transformation. Like for me, it wasn't ever some sense of like, oh, I watched something about, like, for me, it's very much the same as you. I didn't really actually, like, I didn't even know any Palestinian students until I want to say, about maybe 2 years ago, at least consciously. One of my friends was Palestinian, but I didn't realize just because it never came up. But the point is that what really made me just kind of study the history in a new context was, for one, I took a class about Israeli politics, as well as like the history of like the modern Middle East, so like mainly like colonial era, and it was mainly focused on Israel and in Palestine. And my teacher, he grew up in Jerusalem, but he lived in Haifa, and he's Israeli, but he taught the history, not just one side of it. And what I thought was so interesting is it wasn't nothing that I learned actually contradicted what I'd been taught. It was just like the other half of the puzzle that gave context and, made me reevaluate things a bit. But it was ultimately seeing Israel's actions in Gaza. I mean, like, this is the way that I see it. Like, because people will try to justify it, and I feel like that's just always going to be a losing argument, because whether it's a terrorist group, whether it's an individual, whether it's even a majority of a society, I personally think that, and I mean, I think this should be more than just me personally thinking, but if you do to any society what Israel has done to Gaza, there's just never a justification for it. And even if you try and find a justification, like say, even if 100% of a society hates you and wants you dead, I'm not saying that they've been exterminated, but society in Gaza has been devastated. That's undeniable. But basically that if you completely wipe out a society or wipe out an entire people, even if you think it's justified, even if you try to make that justification, what does that do to your soul? And that's something that because I personally, I'm in a relatively more conservative part of the US, and that also reflects in the Jewish community. It's kind of interesting to, like, some of the things I've heard legitimately have made me do a double take, like things that I never thought that I could possibly hear from members of the Jewish community. and I think like none of that's in the same way that we're talking about like stereotypes and how things come about, none of that's inherent. But when people let that take root as like existential realities where I don't know, I just feel like people end up becoming a little less human because they stop seeing the human in the other.
I'm with you on that. What's where are you guys at with the Canaanite project?
So, I mean, honestly, I'm not like super on top of things. I've got so much going on, but for me, I've mainly just been trying to spread awareness, spread knowledge about the history, and so what I do find really interesting, and I think this kind of goes so one thing is that both Jews and Palestinians, just because I feel like there's been so much of this idea of competing narratives and trying to prove one's legitimacy to be in the land, it creates this. I mean, like for instance, I find this interesting because there's this Palestinian Jew who I follow on social media, and she ended up actually repeating the claims of of European Jews being Khazars. And so I basically responded that that all the evidence shows that to claim that Ashkenazi Jews are descended from Khazars and have no connection to the land of whether you call it Israel or Palestine, that essentially to make that claim is as fanciful as trying to say that Palestinians aren't from the land because they're Arabs and speak Arabic, as if there aren't Jews who are Latino or Hispanic. Like my dad, his family escaped before the Holocaust, like the years prior. They escaped to Colombia, and his first language Spanish. That's his first like culture. He's Latin, but like him being Latin or Latino or Hispanic doesn't somehow make him not Jewish, whether you want to say him being Jewish is the Khazars or whether you just admit that it's one of the diasporas from historic Palestine. And I think what's interesting about that is that I was actually talking with some people in the Canaanist group chat about this because it disturbed me. I wouldn't be like, I know this is a narrative, especially because I think the Soviet era propaganda and like people like Mahmoud Abbas, that the Khazar theory became really prominent, especially because a lot of the founders of the Zionist movement were from Eastern Europe. So it kind of was used almost like as oh, we gotcha. But what was I saying? That with that, it disturbs me when I see stuff like that from the Jewish community. And apparently I don't know if you've heard of this, that there's even apparently some Jews in Israel who believe the Khazar theory, but I don't know, that's definitely aside. What I was going to say though is there's this one really good book. I've only read the intro chapter to it. I've also listened to an interview with the author, but it's called When We Were Arabs by, I forget the name of the author, but it's really, really well written. And basically it goes into depth about the history of how Jews from, across the Ottoman Empire and, the countries that were part of it, that they spoke Arabic. They were part of Arabic culture. A lot, even today in Israel, you can still go to some, you could just call it Mizrahi, but whether it's Assyrian or Egyptian or Lebanese Jewish household, and a lot of them still will play Feiruz or Kulthum. And even though there's a sense of we're not Arab, there is still this affinity for that culture. And what I find interesting today is that, a lot of the peacenik movement is more Ashkenazi, while the people who initially would have had more of this affinity, even if there was, tensions at different times. I mean, people forget that Egypt, Iraq, Syria, they were their modern, their modern or not modern governments, but in the 20s, 30s, a lot of those governments had Jews in them. And again, you could say these were colonial governments, but Jews were still a part of it. This wasn't it's not the same as in Palestine where there was a British effort anyway, sorry, I could go on forever.
Anyways, cool.
But-
Thank you, Ariel. I am going to move on because I want to wrap it up and I want to bring Serge on. But
Definitely.
thanks for joining. Is it Ariel or Ariel?
Ariel.
Ariel.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm glad you
Great
joined,
meeting you.
and definitely join us again soon.
I will. I'm so glad I saw you all were live. I just watched. I was like, when I heard this other guy come on and he says he's a Canaanist, I'm like, oh come on, real Canaanists don't believe that bullshit.
But he's
And,
like he's 50% troll, so it's really hard to know what he believes.
Oh,
You know? Yeah. He trolls
the
a
best
lot.
part about the best part about Canaanitism though is that it's a secular movement, which means it's not atheist, it's not religious, it's just come as you are, as long as you respect people.
I could get behind that. Sounds about right. Awesome, man. Cool. To wrap it up, we'll bring Serge on. Serge,
Hello, can you hear me?
how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. So do you have something specific you want to share, or should I ask you questions?
No,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you something. I was listening to your stream earlier, and when you had Altoids and House of Atreus on, you said something that kind of bothered me. Because they were both kind of saying unhinged things, you kind of just said, oh, you know, this is what I love about this. What you said was like, oh, this is what I love about, you know, Zionism. You know, that, you know, they can justify these type of actions with their viewpoints. And I thought that was kind of lazy intellectually to just label it as quote unquote Zionism. And I just was kind of baffled that you actually said that, because I always kind of figured you were a more heady person, and just kind of using that term in kind of a very, you know, derogatory way was kind of surprising.
Yeah, I hear that. I'm happy to go deeper into what I meant and where that comes from. So just to give people context, we had someone on before, and he said he's like a religious Zionist, and he said something along the lines of, we should have carpet bombed Gaza. And then somebody else who's a liberal Zionist said, wait, but what about the hostages? And I thought that was a perfect encapsulation of Zionism, specifically the thought leadership space within Zionism, right? So you can't separate a movement from its activists. And you have a very strong class of Zionist activists, and the range of their discourse is light dehumanization to heavy dehumanization, light human rights violations to heavy human rights violations. There's close to no Zionist activists that call Israel out for their human rights violations. It's just, what is the extent to which you justify them? And I thought that was just a perfect example of that, to see one person saying carpet bombing and the other person has no issue with the carpet bombing, aside from the fact that you would kill hostages. I thought it perfectly summed up the Zionist activist space. So that's essentially what I was getting at.
But what is that? Why is that uniquely Zionist? Is it uniquely Zionist to you? That viewpoint, those viewpoints.
Yeah, for somebody to say carpet bombing Gaza is okay, and for somebody else to say, wait, what about the hostages? Yeah.
So if you were to like take these labels, take that label, apply it to like Russia or you know, some other nationalist movement.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
Would you say, oh, this is just a symptom of Zionism? Is that correct or is that incorrect?
No, I would relate it to the actual Russian nationalism. I would say this encompasses Russian nationalism from the extreme to the moderate, and even the moderate is extreme. So you don't, the one of the challenges, and I think we should get rid of the term Zionism, because if all it means is supporting Jewish self-determination, then that doesn't require a special term. But Zionists are adamant about being proud Zionists. They're proud about keeping the term. They put it in their Twitter profiles that they're Zionists. So they want to identify with this term. So that's the term I use to describe this movement. It's a movement for it's not just the right for Jewish self-determination. It's more of an Israeli nationalist movement. If it was a different country, I wouldn't have a special term. So I would just say this describes Russian nationalism or whatever other nationalism we were describing, or whatever other movement. It could have been communism, right?
See, I kind of appreciate that you said that, because I think the problem is that a lot of people see the term Zionism as like separate from any other types of nationalism, right? That's kind of my big gripe here, is that when people use Zionism, they say it as something like wholly unique, different from like a nationalism from another group or something like that. When in reality, there's no difference between like, you know, Russian nationalism, American nationalism, Jewish nationalism, you know, Zionism, whatever. So like, you know, I found that kind of odd how you phrased that.
Yeah, I hear you. So I do view them as similar. I do consider it more than it just means the right to Jewish self-determination, the way it's described today. And the best way to look at this is most Zionists, if you were to tell Zionists, I support Jewish self-determination, but I do not support the state of Israel. I want to dismantle the state, but Jews can still have self-determination in the areas where they're a majority and have autonomy there. That's an anti-Zionist position, despite supporting Jewish self-determination. Because Zionism today is not about just Jewish self-determination. It's Jewish self-determination in the form of supporting the state of Israel. But we're in agreement. I think the term just causes more confusion than it provides clarity. But that is the term that is currently used to describe Israeli nationalism. Can I hear that maybe I could lead by example and stop using the term Zionism and just describe it as like the pro-Israel advocacy movement or Jewish nationalism? Maybe I should reject it. If I don't think the term is useful, maybe I should reject it. Like I think that is actually legitimate feedback, that I shouldn't use it if I don't agree that it's a good term. Fair.
Okay. All right. Great.
Anything else?
No, that was
okay. But Serge, so as somebody who is a Zionist, I want to ask you: don't you see the problem where the Overton window in Zionism discourse today is like liberal Zionists are not liberals. Liberal Zionists engage in misinformation. And I'm talking about the class of activists, but you can't separate a movement from those who advocate from it. That's how people are going to perceive it. Where are the Zionists that are going to be honest about what Israel is doing? They're close to non-existent. And like, don't you see that as a problem?
I do see that as a huge problem. But I mean, I still would say that this isn't a uniquely Zionistic thing. This is just a problem with a lot of national movements where they'll have a bias towards their side and overlook, you know, whatever atrocities that are being committed.
Yeah. Is this consistent through all nationalism?
That's my main problem, is that, you know, calling this, because I see on, you know, and I know Twitter is like a kind of a weird bubble. And, you know, there's a lot of weird viewpoints, but I see this as a kind of a problem where they portray this as wholly unique, as if separate from any other national movement. When if you put any other national group in the same situation, they would act the same way. There's nothing unique about Zionism. That's it. It's just a national movement.
Unique about it. Yeah. I would say the uniqueness is, it's like Russia has existed for so long. So people don't question its existence. It's like Russia is just part of the world. There's people who remember a time when Israel didn't exist. So it's still seen as this new construct that has not gained legitimacy yet because they have not found a way to exist without oppressing another people. So it has a little bit of a uniqueness in its newness and in the fact that it has not existed yet in a non-oppressive way, which makes people question its legitimacy.
Like, for example, India is about as old as Israel, right? But we don't question the age of India as only being the same age as Israel, the same way we do with Israel, right? It's not like that there was always
No,
been
yeah,
a-
but
an ancient state.
it's not the same because like Indians have been living in India for a very long time. It's just the construct of the Indian state is relatively new, but people
But
aren't.
before India, there was separate kingdoms.
Yeah,
there
fair,
wasn't
but
the
it's
national
not. It's
identity of
not.
India.
Look, it's not.
Or
People.
even Pakistan. Pakistan is more applicable in some respects.
It's people view Zionism in a different light because the Jews living there, like they just view it as settler colonialism. So they look at it as like Rhodesia, right, or Liberia, right. This is how people categorize it, as a movement of people coming from abroad, claiming land for their own. Why is that legitimate? It's not legitimate. We need to fight it. For a bunch of Indians who were different kingdoms to now say, okay, we're going to be a unified kingdom, they say that is very much within their right. It is not within the right of the Jewish people to engage in settler colonialism and claim that as their state. So it's not quite comparable. The best comparisons would be places like Rhodesia and Liberia, which don't exist in the same form anymore. Like Rhodesia's gone, and Liberia, is their system of inequality is destroyed. It may even be reversed now that the natives have more rights there. I don't remember, but people are not seeing Israel in the same way. It's not the people living on a land for thousands of years and saying, okay, we're just going to create this state apparatus. They're like, no, this is settler colonialism. It still hasn't proven legitimacy because it's never lived in peace. Why should we accept this? So I don't think it's I could understand why people.
Do you think that all nationalities are just constructs? Or is there something inherently natural in nationalism?
Well, nationalities are constructs, because the concept of a nation state is a construct, right? That's a human invented thing. Even I would go on to say ethnicities and races are also constructs, but those are constructs that are more categories based on a biological reality that we just create a term for. Nationalism is not based on any reality, not any biological reality. It's like the reality of these group of people building institutions to govern them. So that is a nation state. So yeah, that is, I'd say, by definition, a construct.
Okay, so I mean, again, like, just to reiterate what I was saying, there isn't anything inherently different about Jewish nationalism from any other forms of nationalism. And the way people treat it is as if it's a fake thing, like it's a fake thing, when in fact, I mean, in general, all types of nationalisms are kind of fake to a certain extent. I don't really I just find it odd how they make it kind of unique towards Zionism and not towards anything else.
Well, but again, all the other examples, the examples we have that are most similar to Zionism, people have questioned, or they just no longer exist, right? Like,
I mean, the comparisons between Rhodesia, I mean, that's from very niche academic sources. There's no serious academics that compare Israel to Rhodesia. You have more of a mainstream consensus with comparing it to apartheid South Africa.
Yeah, South Africa and Liberia are better examples.
Even Liberia, that's still more niche. I've never really heard anyone from.
No, but I think Liberia is actually the best example, because Liberia was a native population returning, right? They're Liberians, it's either they were returning to their ancestral homeland or a general vicinity of their ancestral homeland, and then engaging in settler colonialism against the native population. They could claim similar historic claims to the land. They too were oppressed and wanted to move to have a better life, and it did not gain international legitimacy. So Israel did gain international. Israel was much more successful than than Liberia, but people are viewing it in a similar way. It's not. It can't really be compared to all these other states that seem to have a much more natural formation. Now, what is true that many states don't have the most natural formation. They are a product of colonialism. And I don't think if the people living in these nation states, so for example, if Indians are happy being Indian, I don't see why that would concern Westerners. But if Indians started a movement to break India up because it was a colonial construct and they didn't like it, I think Westerners would gladly support that movement. It's just why would Westerners have any issue with India? There's like no movement against India, and even more so. Let's say somebody were to say the caste system is inherent to India, and the only way to India refuses to change it. The only way to actually change it is to dismantle India. And there was a movement like that's a movement that could actually gain traction in the West over enough decades. Like the pro-Palestine movement took decades until it had mainstream popularity. But even that, even that wouldn't be as compelling because the caste system is thousands of years old. It's not, you can't even attribute that to India. That's literally just the culture of the people living there. So it would be hard to attribute that to the state. So maybe that's not the best example, but I don't think there's any state that exists today that is comparable to Israel. So people put it in a different category. Like I know people want to say it's just anti-Semitism. That's how you explain the difference. But again, it's not, people didn't reject Liberia because they were racist. It's just they understood it to be wrong. Same with apartheid South Africa. That wasn't anti-white. They just understood it to be wrong.
Okay.
And what I will say, the focus of pro-Israel advocates is to convince the world that Israel is good and that our neighbors are the bad guys in some variation or another. That's what they're trying to do. But the best way to convince the world to not hate Israel is for Israel to transform into being a state that's not so easy to hate. Like, there's only so much you could brainwash people to not to love Israel. If you look honestly at what Israel does in their actions, having an issue with that is a very natural response. And if people want Israel's image to change globally, don't try to pressure people or convince people that Israel is good. Actually turn Israel into a good country, and then people would naturally start liking it. Like if you want to defeat anti-Zionism, make Zionism something that is appealing to the world. It's just not right now. And the activists are doing a disservice because most people find them to be cringe and off-putting,
Oh no, I agree. I think most of a lot of the mainstream pro-Israel advocates are pretty cringe.
Yeah. And you need to think, most people don't live in a, like there's not many Jews in the world, right? We're 0.2% of the global population. So if you don't live in Israel, if you don't live in New York, LA, Miami, or some places in like France or Brazil, you very well could live your entire life without meeting a single Jew. I've met people who I was the first Jew they ever met. So if the only Jews you are seeing are the online pro-Israel activists, that is gonna determine how you start to feel about Jews, right? Because that's your only data points you ever get. And it's like, okay, well, I don't know about these people. So I take it personally, right? It's not only do I find it cringe, it's like you're making us all look bad with your conduct.
Yeah, I just I think when it comes to the kind of I think something happened probably with like kind of the Likud side that are just kind of dumb and they don't actually know how to articulate things well, or in a way that they could communicate better. It seemed like in the 60s and 70s, so most of the world was on the side of Israel, and that kind of slowly changed by the 80s and the 90s as the occupation continued.
Yeah, exactly. That's why when people say, well, why don't more people talk about Syria or Congo or Sudan? Well, this has been decades. This has been a multi-generational movement. It's taken a long time for people to actually care about it. you know, all these other movements could build all these other causes can build similar movements had they had as much time. But there's other reasons. You know, people have there's going to be a greater focus on the Holy Land than there will be on Africa. You know, Africa is generally just seen as less important. You know, Muslims are going to show solidarity with Palestinians. You have a fair bit of Muslims in the West that are joining the movement. You know, there's a strong support by Western nations of Israel, so that's also getting more people to notice. It's like, who does my government support? What are they involved in? And then many generations of building this movement just, you know, caused an a global pro-Palestine movement. And I know, you know, many Zionists are upset about this. They're like, why all the disproportionate attention? I get it. I get that people are upset, but all oppressed people deserve a global movement speaking for them. Unfortunately, we don't have that. And in fact, as much as there's disproportionate attention on Palestine, it's not enough because they're still oppressed, right? The Western nations are still enabling, to some degree, Israel's oppression. So even though it's disproportionate, it's still insufficient. So all oppressed people deserve as much attention as Palestine, but Palestine deserves even more attention than it's currently getting. And it's not feasible for every issue to have a global movement, but you know, they do deserve it the same way. And you know, the only people.
I'm just curious, why exactly do you think it deserves more attention than any other group?
Oh no. I don't. I was saying, like, all movements deserve as much as Palestine, but even as much as Palestine has, it's not enough. I know the way I framed it, it sounded like, and they deserve even more. Palestine does not deserve more than any other oppressed people. They're luckier than these other groups to have a global movement supporting them, which do increase the chances that they're will eventually, you know, have their rights no longer violated. But it's not that they're more deserving of it than any other people. You know, all people deserve this. And I will say, you know, the other group there's only one other group that has been as successful. Well, maybe not, but the one other group that comes to mind that's been very successful at getting disproportionate attention on their oppression is us Jews, right? We've done an excellent job at getting Jewish oppression, getting the Holocaust to be seen as a, you know, in a special status amongst other genocides, to get anti-Semitism taken very seriously compared to things like Islamophobia or racism. This is changing in recent years, but Jews have been very successful in getting global sympathy, and Palestinians have too. So that's another thing we have in common.
Like, I don't know if you can make a comparison between anti-Semitic. I mean, we're kind of veering off the original topic, but I don't know if you can make a comparison between anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, considering that, again, like you said, Jews are only 0.02% of the world population, compared to Muslims who are about 20% of the world population. I mean, there is a significant minority imbalance between Islam and Judaism.
But why?
Jews are a tiny minority.
Right, but so that is definitely a distinction between the two forms of hate. But why does that mean that one is more okay than the other?
I don't think one is okay more than the other. I just think that, you know, one should be more, especially considering that, you know, there was a kind of a significant genocide against the Jews, you know, 85 years ago. There should be kind of seen as like, okay, you know, we have to be very careful about how we present and, you know, talk about Jews and, you know, their beliefs and stuff like that, compared to Islam, which is, you know, a majority, you know, a world religion with a quite substantial population around the world.
Right, but yeah, but Islamophobia is not impacting Muslims in Pakistan. It's impacting minority Muslims. So, for example, Muslims are 1% of the United States. Jews are 2% of the United States. So while they're a much larger global population, in the U.S. they're an even smaller minority. and they are subject to some number of hate crimes. So it's legitimate to be concerned about both. But it's I agree with you that there's a difference. I just don't think the difference is all.
There's a historical difference, though. That's more what I'm talking about. You know, discrimination that Jews have faced historically.
All right. Well, let's take a different example. Let's take Native Americans or Black Americans who in the United States have faced horrors that Jews have not experienced, not in the United States. Yet you get more backlash from anti-Semitism than anti-Indian and anti-Black hate, generally speaking. And it's because we're more disproportionately powerful, and and again, this isn't something you and I have any power of, but the fact that, you know, Jews do possess many positions of power, those Jews will wield their power in order to punish those engaging in anti-Semitism, when Native Americans or Blacks don't always have the same privilege. Right? It was only recently till they changed the Washington Redskins. Imagine if you had a football team called like I don't even know what you would call it.
Have there been, you know, systemic riots towards injustices towards Black people in a way that was quite significant?
I mean, blacks were, blacks were lynched.
You had you had a lot of protests in the 60s. I'm old enough to remember the Rodney King riots. You had the George Floyd protests. These were big, massive movements all across the United States. A lot of them in solidarity, and some of them, a lot of them were within the Black community, but also within a bigger solidarity movement. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that comparable for Jewish people or anything like that.
That's true.
I don't want to downplay the oppression, the things that have happened to like the African American community, but I'm just saying, like, you're almost saying like, Jews have somehow had bigger movements fighting against their own discrimination in Blacks. And
so the movement will look very different. So we have successfully been able to challenge anti-Semitism and punish our haters through our institutional power, whereas these other groups didn't. So they engage in protests. We deployed a very different strategy to fight our haters than what Black Americans do, and that's just because we have different means, And also, so we did not in recent years, we did not have Jews were not included in intersectionality, right? So the woke left, who is very much behind BLM protests, the way they view it is all oppressed groups are together, but Jews are not oppressed because we're disproportionately powerful. So they don't view us as oppressed; they view us as in the class of the oppressor. And I consider this to be a fundamentally flawed framework of understanding the world. But this was their framework.
Actually very reactionary.
Yeah, and it's just not helpful, and we could rail on wokeness nonstop, and why it was just a bad set of ideas. Somebody says, breaking news: the U.S. just attacked Iran. Is that right? That doesn't make sense, but oh yeah, whoa! It struck Iran targets after. Okay, well, it'll quiet down. The strait will be closed for 24 hours. It'll reopen, and we're back to it. That's my guess. Anyways, what were we talking about? Sorry, I got distracted by that.
Whether as Jews as a minority are not treated as a minority the same way other minorities are treated.
Oh yeah. So yeah, Jews were never included in intersectionality. They were never really accepted as an oppressed group in the woke movement. So in recent years, it's not like they're going to have the same grassroots support had they wanted it. But Jews we used our institutional power in order to, silence people who challenged us, deplatform anti-Semites. We've been very, very successful at that, and it's not an effective strategy. I think it just reinforces, right? So somebody can say Jews have too much power, and then they get deplatformed. It's like, oh, well, that just reinforces what they said. I would personally think we should invite more people in for conversations. Like, I think Jewish institutions should just be having conversations with as many anti-Semites as possible, bring in neo-Nazis, build ties with them. This, for some people get mad when I say this, but the strategy of just fighting all the haters and trying to deplatform them has been shown to be super ineffective. I think this approach would have been better. And I was actually very inspired by Daryl Davis, who is a black man who befriended like 100 Klansmen and got them to leave the Klan simply by befriending them. Like, what a guy. So BLM should learn, both BLM and us and Jews should learn from him. And I think that's a better approach. But our different strategies are just because we had different means. People generally engage in the means they have to achieve their goals, and we could do it through institutional power. They do it through more grassroots protest.
Okay. I don't know if I have anything else to talk about. So. Unless you have a question for me.
No, it's already 1 a.m. here. I'm dying to sign off already, but definitely happy to talk more soon. And it's been a while since we chatted, so I'm glad we got to catch up a little bit. Cool. So we're gonna wrap up the stream. If anybody wants to, there'll be a conversation continuing in Discord. For those who want to join, I'll drop a link here in chat. It's also in the video description. And yeah, signing off. I will do another stream sometime in the next few days. Much love, everybody. This was fun. Okay, and those here on Discord.